I arrived in this world 6 days ago, and today was finally my turn at the Career Talent Testing Center in the capital of the Tianyan Empire. I was nervous but excited. An old gray-haired tester pointed at a crystal ball and told me to put my hands on it. Since I looked strong, he tested my warrior talent first, 96 points. So close, but not enough. You need over 100 to qualify. Back in my old life, I was a mechanical designer, so fighting with swords wasn't really my thing anyway. I asked him to test my magic talent instead. When he did, his eyes went wide and he started shouting. My magic power was 243. That's insanely high. People crowded around us, some saying the crystal ball must be broken. The head of the testing center came over and made them retest me with different balls and different testers. Every time, 243. Then came the part that nearly crushed me. To become a mage, you need both high magic power and high control over at least one element. They tested me on every type: fire, water, wind, and all the rest. Every single one came back at 80. Not enough. Each time the tester announced a number, the crowd sighed. By the time he said, light element, 80, I was ready to give up. But then the testers started freaking out, in a good way. The center's director was practically shaking with excitement. He explained that having perfectly balanced control across all elements is extremely rare. It meant I could become something called an elemental puppet master, a special kind of mage who gathers magic elements into solid puppet creatures and commands them in battle. I was thrilled. Mages in this world have status almost equal to nobility. The Empire registers all mages and high-level fighters as special talents, pays them 100 gold coins every month, and gives them all kinds of legal protections. They can't even be arrested without permission from their guild or a direct order from the Emperor. The director invited me into a fancy reception room and explained everything about being an elemental puppet master. It turns out there are fewer than 10 of us on the entire continent, and only 2 in the Tianyan Empire. Puppet masters create elemental puppets that are connected to our minds, like battle pets. These puppets can absorb magic elements from nature and cast powerful spells on their own. But there's a big weakness. Casting takes a very long time. Long enough that any fighter could kill me several times over. So puppet masters are terrible in surprise fights, but incredibly valuable in group battles and large-scale wars. Imagine the enemy having unkillable puppets constantly blasting magic at your army. A commander's worst nightmare. After the explanation, the director offered to personally escort me to the Mages Guild to register. By law, every mage must join the guild, so I happily accepted. Outside the testing center, a beast tamer brought over a magical creature, a wind turtle. It looked like a huge version of a golden turtle from Earth, with a flat back bigger than a large round table. It could hover up to 3 meters off the ground and travel 30 to 50 kilometers per hour, smooth as glass. 4 luxury chairs were strapped to its shell. Basically, this was the testing center's official car, and the beast tamer was the driver. Once we climbed on and started moving, I couldn't feel any bumping at all. I thought to myself, even a Rolls-Royce isn't this smooth. Since I told the director I came from a remote village, he pointed out landmarks along the way. Soon we entered a quiet, green area, the Mage District. In the distance stood the famous Mage Tower, the tallest building in the capital. It was truly impressive. Then we came across a noisy crowd outside the Light Mage's liaison office. About a dozen people were arguing with guards at the gate. The director explained these were families with seriously ill relatives, begging for a light mage to heal them. Light mages are like priests. They can cure diseases, but there are so few of them, and their magic power is limited. Royalty, nobles, and special talents get priority. For ordinary people, the guild holds weekly healing sessions with limited spots. Half go to the highest bidders, and the other half are given out by lottery. These people at the gate hadn't gotten a spot and refused to leave. I thought about it and figured the guild was doing the best it could. At least the lottery system gave poor people a chance. Further on, we passed the Wind Mage's office. People were lined up with carts piled high with goods, paying wind mages to cast a float spell on their cargo. The goods would hover half a meter off the ground. Light as air, you could push a mountain of stuff with one hand. Then they'd tie a rope to a fast beast and transport everything at top speed. The spell only lasted a few hours, a day at most, but it was brilliant. Magic here really touches every part of daily life. After that, we hit guarded checkpoints. The director's assistant showed identification papers at each one, and the guards checked them carefully before letting us through. Security around the Mages Guild was extremely tight. The wind turtle stopped in front of the Mage Tower, and we went inside. The director asked the receptionist if Master Bashako, the chairman of the Mages Guild, was available. The receptionist said the master was busy with magic experiments, but when the director mentioned they'd found someone with balanced magic control, the receptionist's eyes went wide. He looked me over and said the Empire was about to get its third elemental puppet master. He rushed off to inform Bashako, stepping into a small teleportation circle inside the tower. A flash of white light, and he was gone. While we waited, I looked around the tower. It was cool inside despite the heat outside, with a constant gentle breeze and fresh air flowing through. The place had temperature control magic circles and wind magic circles built right in. I thought to myself that magical civilization here is really advanced. The only thing holding it back is how few mages there are. Soon the receptionist returned with two old men. The first was Bashako himself, white-haired, thin-faced, wearing a worn but spotless robe. He carried a staff with a huge magic crystal on top, but wore no jewelry at all. His eyes had a strange power to them, like they could see right through you. The other old man wore a white robe and carried a large crystal ball. The director greeted Bashako with deep respect, and they exchanged polite words. The director talked about how the emperor always says the testing center is the root of the empire's great tree. I watched quietly and figured the director was using this chance to build a connection with Bashako. He was smart about it. He only talked about his responsibilities, never his accomplishments. He clearly understood how politics worked. Bashako was polite to the director, but I could tell his attention was really on me. He sent me upstairs to the second floor with the specialist tester for a more precise reading. The results were even more impressive than before. My elemental control values ranged from 79.99 to 80.02, a fluctuation of less than 0.03, and my magic power was 242.86. Even Bashako was surprised. He smiled and gave me some advice. Among the guild's 3 mages ranked level 8 or above, including himself, none had started with exceptional talent. Meanwhile, the ones who did have the highest talent were still stuck at mid-level. Talent matters, but hard work matters more. Inside I thought, you don't need to tell me that. Even though this body is only 19, I've lived a whole other life. But outwardly I nodded and said I'd remember his words. Then he explained my situation. The guild only has 2 other puppet masters. One is away on a mercenary mission in the Dark Forest, and the other is stationed at the Empire's border with the army. Neither can train me right now, so I'll need to study on my own for a while. He told me the 3rd floor of the Mage Tower is a library with nearly every magic book on the continent, including ones about elemental puppet magic. If I got stuck, I could ask the Magic Research Institute or come to him directly. He called over a staff member to handle my registration paperwork, encouraged me a bit more, and then went back to his experiments. After Bashako left, a staff member named Peter introduced himself. He wasn't a mage, just a clerk assigned to handle special-type mages like me. He told me the Empire currently had 817 special talents total, with 335 mages among them. Only 16 were high-level, 2 were grand mages at level 8, and the chairman alone was level 9. Peter's department covered just 5 people, 1 space mage, 2 puppet masters, and 2 summoners, and none of them were even in the capital. He was basically getting paid to sit around doing nothing, which sounds nice. But he complained about only getting base salary with no bonuses since he wasn't actually serving anyone. He was genuinely happy I showed up. Peter helped me through registration quickly. I got my mage robe and professional badge. He mentioned that the Emperor holds a knighting ceremony once per quarter, and since puppet masters are highly valued in warfare, I'd likely receive an honorary baron title. But that was still 2 months away. The guild gave me a room in the Mage District dormitory and would eventually provide a luxury villa in the capital, plus the 100 gold coins monthly from the government. The rules were relaxed, just 1 week of free service to the guild per year, and the rest of my time was my own. Most mages here are actually scholars who study magic applications rather than fighters. There's also a monthly exchange meeting where mages share knowledge and learn from each other. I like this freedom. Since waking up in this body, I only inherited the language and writing, no other memories from the original owner. I'd woken up soaking wet by a river, wearing basic warrior clothes, and carrying a beautiful jade pendant. So far nobody had recognized me, and I hoped it stayed that way. The dormitory was quiet. Only about 10 mages lived there out of space for hundreds. I borrowed a pile of magic books from the tower's library and started studying. Back in my old life, I was a top mechanical designer. I wasn't great with people, but my technical skills got me to department manager at a well-known company. I had patience for things others found boring. These magic books weren't too hard for me. Years of formal education gave me strong logical and abstract thinking skills, so I picked up the basics fast. Using elemental puppets in battle requires 2 steps. First, make a puppet seed in advance. Second, cast the puppet spell when battle starts. The seed quality matters a lot. Better seeds make puppets that last longer and are harder to destroy. After about 10 days of meditation training, I tried making my first puppet. The materials were simple: rubber tree sap, which is cheap and common, and a magic beast crystal core, which is expensive because hunters risk their lives to get them. I bought 5 level 1 cores from magic item shops. Each cost 1 gold and 50 silver, so 7.5 gold total, nearly a common person's monthly income. Back in my room, I crushed a small water element crystal core into powder, mixed it with some tree sap, and kneaded it like dough until it became stretchy and flexible. Then I held the little ball in my hands, chanted the spell, and channeled my magic power into it. The ball glowed faint blue. That meant the puppet seed was successfully made. Since it was a water element seed, it could only become a water puppet. I took it to Moon Shadow Lake in the Mage District, where water elements were abundant. I held the seed, cleared my mind, and began chanting. I'd memorized the long spell perfectly, fast but precise. The ball started glowing blue, then floated up from my hands, losing its solid form and becoming a shifting blob of blue light. The light vanished, and down jumped a translucent wolf made entirely of water. A wolf-shaped body of clear water, moving and acting just like a real wolf. After the water wolf appeared, I collapsed onto the grass by the lake, completely drained of magic power. The wolf howled once, ran over to me, circled me twice, then bounced around the lakeside. When I had no commands for it, it just played nearby on its own. I reached out and touched its head. It felt solid, like firm rubber, and my hand stayed dry. I wanted to test how tough it was, so I kicked it hard in the stomach. It flew through the air, flipped over, landed perfectly fine, and trotted right back to me, wagging its tail like a loyal dog. No aggression toward its master at all. The wolf wasn't very powerful in a fight, but it did know one water spell, Water Pillar. I gave the mental command, and it shot a thick column of water nearly 20 meters into the sky. Impressive force, but honestly it was more useful for putting out fires than for combat. Pretty lousy as a battle puppet, but hey, succeeding on my first try was still worth celebrating. I headed back to the dorm to keep studying. The water wolf followed me the whole way, and other mages along the path congratulated me. Back in my room, I buried myself in books until my stomach started growling. When I stood up to go eat, I noticed the wolf was still there, curled up on the floor like it was sleeping. That surprised me. It had been over 2 hours. According to the books, puppets usually last 1 to 2 hours, 3 at most. I told it to stay put while I went to lunch. When I came back, it was sitting exactly where I left it, perfectly still. That was past 3 hours now. Strange, but I figured my highly balanced magic control was the reason. By bedtime, the wolf was still going strong. When I woke up the next morning, it was standing guard in the middle of my room. Nearly 20 hours, an absolute record for any elemental puppet. After the excitement wore off, I made a decision: hide this. If people found out my puppets lasted this long, the military might force me to enlist, and I'd lose my freedom. Living in the dorm made it too risky. Someone would eventually notice. Better to move to the villa the guild gave me. I packed up some magic books and headed out through the Mage District. The guards saw my mage robe and badge and let me pass without question. The badge glows faintly with magic light only when worn by its owner, so it can't be faked. On the way, I stopped by the Wind Mage's office and greeted Brown, a wind mage who'd previously helped me with spell pronunciation. He noticed my water wolf and was impressed I could already make puppets. I asked him for a favor: to help me test the wolf's resistance to physical damage. A merchant caravan was there getting their goods enchanted with float spells. One of their items was a massive iron cabinet nearly the size of a shipping container, full of weapons that wouldn't break from a fall. Brown cast float on it, lifted the huge thing with one hand, and tossed it into the air where it drifted up like a feather. Everyone stepped back. I sent the water wolf underneath it. When the cabinet reached about 4 meters high, Brown canceled the spell, and the enormous iron box came crashing straight down. After the dust cleared, everyone gathered around. Brown cast float again so the merchants could move the iron cabinet off my wolf. It was completely flattened, thin as a sheet of paper against the ground. People whispered that it was obviously destroyed. But then someone crouched down to touch it, and suddenly the wolf's head popped back up with a loud pop. The guy screamed and scrambled away. The rest of the body was still flat, but then the whole thing inflated like a balloon, and the wolf stood up, shook itself off, let out a long howl, and trotted back to me like nothing happened. Everyone was stunned. It reminded me of a scene from the movie, The Mask. I wanted to test more, so I asked a mid-level warrior from the caravan to stab it with his sword. He thrust his blade straight through the wolf's head with fighting energy behind it. The sword went in, came out the other side, and the wolf was perfectly fine. Just a few drops of water on the blade. As the saying goes, you can't cut water. The warrior looked shaken. He realized that even if this wolf stood still and let him attack forever, he could never kill it. Satisfied with the results, I left the mage district and waited for a taxi. Beast tamers driving wind turtles that carry passengers around the capital. The main roads were full of magical creatures, giant lizard things that served as buses carrying a dozen people, blazing fast storm horses, and slow but incredibly strong three-horned oxen pulling heavy carts. Wind turtles were the smoothest ride, so they were the luxury option. One pulled up within 2 minutes. The driver noticed my water wolf wasn't climbing aboard, but I told him not to worry about it. The wolf simply ran alongside us, keeping up easily at the turtle's speed. Puppets can always sense their master's location, even from thousands of miles away. We arrived at the Golden Water Lake Villa District, a beautiful neighborhood of Roman-style mansions surrounding a big lake, with green trees reflected in the calm water. My villa sat right on the lakeshore. It was a 3-story tower building with gardens, a bathhouse, and luxury facilities everywhere. There was even a special mage study, a magic laboratory, and a huge underground practice hall protected by 3 layers of magical barriers for training mid- and low-level attack spells. I explored every room with excitement. Bright, spacious halls, fine leather sofas, an artistic spiral staircase, polished wooden floors, crystal chandeliers. The master bedroom had a temperature control magic circle built in, though it wasn't active yet because no crystal core had been placed in it. The bed was ridiculously large and bouncy, with fresh bedding neatly folded. Finally, I went to the large bath. I wanted to swim, but the water needed changing first. I gave a mental command, and the wolf jumped in, ran across the water surface like solid ground, dove to the bottom, pulled open the drain cover, and let the old water flow out. Then it jumped back up and cast water pillar at full power, a stream as thick as a barrel, pouring pure, clean water generated from water elements, completely free of impurities. The pool filled up quickly. After a nice swim, I climbed out. Before I even had to think about it, the wolf had already fetched me a clean towel and a fresh set of clothes from the wardrobe. While getting dressed, I had a realization. Watching the wolf awkwardly carry clothes in its mouth made me see the problem with animal-shaped puppets. If I wanted one to clean the house or cook, a wolf just couldn't do those things. Human-shaped puppets would be far better. They can perform complex movements, and in combat they could mimic warrior or archer fighting styles. I decided to focus mainly on humanoid puppets from now on. My next goal was making a combat-ready humanoid fire puppet, which required a level 2 crystal core. Those cost over 10 gold coins each. Being a puppet master is an incredibly expensive profession. No wonder every mage in the guild complains about being poor. I used to think they were faking it, but now I understood. The 100 gold monthly stipend sounds like a lot, about 10 times what ordinary people earn, but high-level magic materials and equipment cost a fortune. I bought a level 2 fire crystal core, which dropped my savings to 60 gold with half the month still to go. Then I failed twice making the puppet seed, burning through more gold. On my 3rd attempt, I finally succeeded, and right at that moment, my water wolf finally dissolved. I calculated it had lasted a full 2 days and 2 nights. I created the fire puppet in my villa's underground practice hall. It was human-shaped, about the same height as a real person, with red flames burning on top of its head. A level 2 fire puppet could cast fireballs continuously, giving it serious attack power. I also found fun, everyday uses for it. I had it dip into the bath for 5 seconds, and the cold water became a hot spring. When cooking, it could hold the pan, and I could control the heat however I wanted. With only 30 gold coins left, I could survive until next month's payment, but couldn't afford more experiments. I needed to earn money, so I headed to the mercenary district. The mercenary guild was huge, with different halls for different mission types. The place was packed with mercenaries, adventure teams, and bounty hunters looking for work. Missions came in 3 tiers: high-danger missions with big payouts that only registered mercenary groups could take, medium missions for small adventure teams, and easy solo missions with low rewards. I didn't want to join a mercenary group yet, so I browsed the bounty hunter section first. The jobs were doable, but only paid a few gold coins, not worth my time. The adventure team section had better pay. One mission asked for 5 sword-tooth tiger pelts in good condition, paying 45 gold. Those were level 2 earth beasts, but they lived in packs. If I stumbled into a whole group alone, I'd have to run for my life. After looking through several missions, I concluded that going solo was risky, but I didn't have teammates I could trust either. So I wandered over to the recruitment area. It was like a noisy marketplace, packed with warriors of different races, big beast men, stocky dwarves, all shouting over each other, looking for teammates or advertising their mercenary groups. A middle-aged man in thief gear approached me, a recruiter from the Breeze Mercenary Group, one of the Empire's top 10. He offered me a position, but I politely declined. I wasn't interested in joining any group permanently. As I walked around the recruitment area, 3 more big-name mercenary groups tried to recruit me. I turned them all down. I just wanted to earn some extra money for my magic research. Then a young woman in high-level warrior armor walked up to me, and I froze. She was stunningly beautiful. Bright eyes like stars, perfect features, snow-white skin, and a fitted pink combat outfit that showed off an athletic figure. She carried herself with both grace and strength. She introduced herself as Lucci, captain of the Rose Mercenary Group, a level 5 warrior who'd recently been promoted to high rank. She asked if I'd be interested in a temporary partnership, working together on a few missions without me joining her group permanently. That was exactly what I wanted. We went to a quiet room in a tavern near the guild to talk, along with her maidservant. I introduced myself as a level 2 elemental puppet master. She'd never heard of the profession, which wasn't surprising since there are only 3 of us in the whole empire. When I explained that I could create puppets of any element depending on the crystal core I used, she was shocked and said that basically made me an all-element mage, the most powerful profession. I corrected her. There's no strongest profession, only strongest individuals. Puppet masters have serious weaknesses like long casting times. I was honest with her about my abilities, with one exception. I told her puppets normally last 1 to 2 hours, which is technically true for most puppet masters. I just didn't mention that mine last 2 full days. Lucci told me about her group. The Rose Mercenary Group was an officially registered D-rank outfit with 112 members, but only 35 were fighters. The rest were life skill workers. I'd read enough about this world to recognize it as a hybrid organization, part mercenary team, part merchant company. They did combat missions, but also ran other businesses like trade and production. Under Imperial law, any group with that many armed members had to register as a mercenary group. We got down to discussing how to split the mission rewards. Lucci was straightforward, 60-40. You take 60%. Her maid coughed and whispered that the deal was unfair since their whole team would be working while I was just one person. But Lucci waved her off and explained honestly. They needed to complete B-rank missions to upgrade from a D-rank to a C-rank mercenary group. Since the missions would be tough, she thought I deserved the bigger share. I appreciated her honesty. She could have easily hidden the fact that she was using these missions for her group's promotion. My own bottom line had actually been 40% for myself, since they were bringing over 100 people. I didn't care too much about the money. What mattered more was building a good long-term partnership. So I offered a 50-50 split instead, but with one condition. She had to advance me 300 gold coins up front, win or lose. Lucci looked surprised. I explained, embarrassed, that I'd spent all my money on magic experiments and was basically broke. She and her maid stared at each other, then burst out laughing. Lucci was shaking with laughter, saying if a mage had no money for food, then beggars must be billionaires. Then, she made a better offer. Instead of 300 gold, I could pick any 30 level 2 crystal cores from their inventory. The market value of those was around 400 gold, and crystal cores were exactly what I needed anyway. I immediately agreed. With the deal settled, Lucci ordered 2 huge jars of Hero's Blood, the Empire's most famous strong liquor. Her maid reminded her she'd promised someone named Uncle Habby she'd stop drinking, but Lucci pretended not to remember and insisted 2 jars wasn't much. When the waiter brought the wine, he muttered something about whether it was for bathing. Lucci refused a regular cup and asked for big bowls instead. She picked up her bowl and drained the whole thing in one long gulp. I stared. I'd done my share of drinking back on Earth, but I couldn't possibly down a full bowl of liquor like that. I started making excuses about mages having weak bodies, but before I could finish, she grabbed my bowl too and drank it down. Then the waiter refilled both bowls and she did it again, drinking hers and then snatching mine. After 5 huge bowls of strong liquor, her cheeks turned rosy and she looked even more beautiful. Then she collapsed face down on the table and didn't move. Her maid sighed and said this happened every time. Lucci's actual tolerance was only half a bowl at most, but she always chugged several bowls and passed out cold, leaving the poor maid to carry her home. I was speechless. Lucci had seemed like some legendary drinker with her dramatic chugging, but she was just showing off. I asked the waiter to return the unopened jar and pay the bill. He nervously said store policy didn't allow returns. I told him to get the owner. A fat man came stomping over, cursing about who dared cause trouble, but the moment he saw my mage robe and badge, and the fire puppet standing beside me, his anger melted into a nervous smile. He slapped the waiter, and suddenly the store had an always satisfy the customer policy. I paid for the meal, a little over 2 gold coins, but made sure they took back the sealed jar. I wasn't going to bully anyone with my status, but I wasn't going to get ripped off either. Then came the problem of getting Lucci home. Her maid Lizzie was too small and weak to carry her, so I ended up carrying Lucci on my back out of the tavern. She was slim and light, so it wasn't hard. I just didn't really want to put her down. We took a wind turtle to the Rose mercenary group's base on the edge of the mercenary district. It was just a few modest buildings, nothing fancy for a D-rank group. But I noticed good signs, supplies neatly organized, decent equipment on the mercenaries, plenty of transport beasts, and most importantly, the members all seemed cheerful and in good spirits. I told Lizzie I'd come back the next morning to work out the details and headed home. The next day I arrived early. Lucci came out with a middle-aged man she introduced as Uncle Habby, a high-level archer. Habby was excited to meet me. He'd fought in a border war years ago and had seen the other puppet, Master Sherlin, in action. He described how those unkillable puppets charged through enemy lines casting devastating spells, terrifying every soldier they faced. He said it was an honor to fight alongside another puppet master. I told him, honestly, that this would be my first real combat mission and asked him to guide me. He seemed surprised by how easy I was to talk to. Apparently the other mages he'd met were all cold and arrogant. He said he believed I'd become even stronger than Sherlin someday. I told him I wished I could meet Sherlin and learn from him, but he was still stationed at the border. Meanwhile, I noticed Lucci's face turning red. She must have remembered being carried on my back yesterday. She quietly turned away to compose herself while Habby and I kept talking. Then the 3 of us sat down in the meeting hall, and Lizzie brought tea and snacks. Lucci had already discussed things with her team and handed me a document with 3 B-rank missions to choose from. I didn't even look at it. Mission selection was their expertise, not mine. I told her to pick whichever she thought best, and just let me know when to leave. All I cared about right now was picking my 30 crystal cores. She smiled and said working with me was easy. They'd take the mission to eliminate an ice giant in the Barber Mountains. It would take about 4 days of travel to reach the target, with possible fights along the way. I needed time to prepare puppet seeds before departure, so we agreed to leave the next morning. Then she took me to the warehouse. The place impressed me. Everything organized perfectly, weapons gleaming on racks, mountains of magical beast materials piled neatly. For a D-rank group, they had remarkable resources. I told Lucci their financial strength seemed more fitting for a C-rank team or above. She explained they also ran a merchant business with their own shop in the capital's trade district and sales channels across the empire's major cities. Smart strategy, building a strong foundation before pushing for higher ranks. The crystal cores were stored in iron cabinets with small labeled drawers, like a traditional medicine shop. There were cores of every element. I only needed level 2 once, so I scanned the labels quickly. Then I spotted something that made my heart jump: light and dark element cores. These are extremely rare because light and dark magical beasts are so uncommon. They cost several times more than other elements and are nearly impossible to find on the market. I pulled open the light drawer. Only 2 cores inside, glowing with faint white light. I could feel the sacred energy pulsing within them. Lucci smiled and reminded me our deal was any 30 level, 2 cores, regardless of element. She was incredibly generous. In the end, I picked 2 light cores, 2 dark cores, and 26 of other elements. There were actually 4 dark cores available, but I only took 2. I didn't want to take too much advantage of them since I was hoping for a long-term partnership. Even so, the total value of these 30 cores far exceeded what I'd originally expected. I headed home to my villa and started making puppet seeds right away. With 4 attempts under my belt, 2 successes, 2 failures, I'd started figuring out the tricks of making puppet seeds. Grind the crystal, core into the finest possible powder, use the right amount of tree sap, knead longer, and make sure the dough is both sticky and elastic. I worked in my villa's magic lab, which had a soundproof barrier for perfect quiet. After meditating to reach a calm state where I could feel the magic elements clearly, I began making seeds one after another, carefully recording the sap measurements and my observations after each one. Out of 30 crystal cores, I successfully made 19 seeds. 11 were wasted, including 1 precious light core. The final count: 1 light, 2 dark, 10 fire, 3 earth, 2 wind, and 1 water. I deliberately picked more fire cores since we were going after an ice giant. I packed the seeds carefully in a sectioned box, ate lunch, took a short nap, reviewed some famous mercenary adventure handbooks, prepared my personal supplies, and went to bed early. The next morning I arrived at the Rose mercenary group's base thinking I was early, but everyone was already nearly finished preparing. Lucci had expected me to show up unprepared for my first mission, but when she saw my stuffed backpack, she realized she'd underestimated me. The team heading out was about 40 people. 10 were life skill workers, a pharmacist for treating injuries, dwarf miners, and gatherers who'd collect rare minerals and resources along the way to sell later. That was another smart revenue stream for the group. The remaining 30+ were fighters, nearly all of the Rose group's combat strength. They were going all in on this mission. They also brought 2 wind turtles, including an evolved one. Normally wind turtles are level 3 beasts, but this one had mutated and broken through to level 4, twice the size, 10 times the carrying capacity, and able to hover higher. Having an evolved beast made me reassess the group's true strength. Uncle Habby clearly had talent beyond just archery. He was sharp at management and business, too. Most fighters rode horses while I sat on a wind turtle with the support staff. We left through the capital's southwest gate and headed toward the Barber Mountains. Along the way I enjoyed the unfamiliar scenery, villages, farms where farmers used magical beasts to help with field work. It had only been about 20 days since I arrived in this world, and everything still felt new. By evening we reached the outer edge of the mountains, still in safe territory. The team set up camp in a sheltered valley with impressive efficiency, tents up, wild magical beasts hunted, and roasted over fires, night watch shifts assigned, all without Lucci or Habby needing to give a single order. I got my own private tent since I was a guest. I could hear distant beast howls in the night, but I slept soundly, trusting this experienced team to keep us safe. The next day, the life skill workers stayed behind to gather resources while we fighters pushed forward on foot. The forest was too dense for wind turtles, so I rode a deer-like magical beast instead. We ran into some level 2 beasts along the way, but the mercenaries handled them quickly. I wanted to fight, but didn't want to waste puppet seeds on weak enemies. By the 3rd day, we were deep in the Barber Mountains, facing level 3 beasts. Battles were constant, but impressively, only 1 mercenary got a minor injury. Their individual skills weren't extraordinary, but their teamwork was flawless. That night, Lucci posted extra guards. Back in my tent, I decided to add my own security, secretly. I used a wind element seed to create a wind eagle. It was nearly invisible, almost completely transparent, perfect for nighttime scouting. I sent it circling the camp in a 4 to 5 kilometer radius, watching for dangerous creatures. Being a puppet, it never got tired and would never slack off. It didn't even understand the concept. I fell asleep peacefully. Sometime later, I felt something pushing me. I woke up startled. Nobody was in the tent, but something invisible was shoving me. Then I remembered, the wind eagle. It had come to warn me. I used a special puppet master spell called Puppet's Eye to see through the eagle's vision. Through its eyes I saw the camp below in the moonlight. This world has 2 large moons. I could see 3 guards patrolling. Then the eagle flew outward fast, and I saw something terrifying. a massive horde of magical beasts flooding through the forest, stretching as far as I could see. I jumped up, threw on clothes, and ran toward Lucci's tent shouting her name. In the darkness, I tripped over a tree root right at her tent entrance and went flying through the flap. I landed on something soft, on Lucci. My face came down and my lips accidentally touched hers. She screamed. I pushed myself up immediately, trying to explain. She was furious, thinking I was attacking her. I blurted out that magical beasts were coming and I'd tripped trying to warn her. The moment she heard beast attack, she snapped into combat mode and asked why the night guards hadn't sounded any alarm. The guards came running when they heard me shouting and Lucci screaming. They said they hadn't detected any beasts. Lucci didn't believe me either. She thought I was just a pervert making excuses. I insisted firmly that a huge group was coming from several directions, just still far away. She asked how I could possibly know. I simply said, I'm a mage. That was enough. In this world, mages are mysterious and powerful, and people accept they have abilities beyond normal understanding. Lucci blew a sharp whistle and shouted for everyone to get ready. The mercenaries woke up and armed themselves in under 30 seconds. Impressive discipline. She sent a mid-level thief named Yite to scout ahead, then asked me what kind of beasts I'd seen. I couldn't name them, so I described them. Huge bodies, yellow and white fur, long fangs, and a horn on their heads. Sword-toothed tigers, the mercenaries gasped. Lucci's face turned serious. She ordered everyone into the trees. The thieves climbed up first and dropped ropes for the rest of us. I scrambled up too, though I knew even these massive trees might not protect us. I'd seen Level 3 beasts knock down big trees during the day. I asked an archer nearby if sword-toothed tigers were dangerous. He looked at me like I was crazy for not knowing. He explained their level 2 earth beasts, not individually strong, but they always travel in groups of at least dozens or hundreds. Then the scout came sprinting back. Sword-toothed tigers, tens of thousands of them. They're everywhere, impossible to count. Lucci told everyone to stay hidden and silent. I suggested we retreat immediately, but she shook her head. It was already too late. If we'd had just a little more warning, maybe we could have escaped. Now all we could do was hope they'd pass without noticing us. The ground started trembling. A sound like rolling thunder grew louder. In the moonlight, a flood of yellow and white bodies poured across the landscape, swallowing the earth. Then someone spotted 2 armored knights on horseback, galloping just ahead of the horde. One was screaming for help, riding straight toward our camp. The other shouted at him to stay away, to not drag innocent people into their death. In a moment like that, you see who people really are. One would sacrifice strangers to save himself. The other refused to endanger others even while dying. But the first knight kept riding toward our tents, and a massive wave of sword-toothed tigers followed right behind him. The mercenaries cursed under their breath. That knight was leading the beast straight to us, violating every rule. In the mercenary code, Lucci gripped her giant sword, bit her lip, and gave a cold order. Shoot him down. Don't let him get closer. I was shocked. This sweet, polite girl could make such a ruthless decision without hesitation. But she was right. That knight was dead either way. If he reached us, the tigers would follow. The archers scrambled to aim from the trees. Habby was fastest, bow drawn, arrow pointed at the approaching knight. He hesitated just a moment. He'd never killed an innocent stranger before. In that second of hesitation, a tiger caught up to the knight and smashed its horn into his horse's leg. The leg shattered in a spray of blood. The horse collapsed and the rider flew forward, crashing onto a rock that shattered his shoulder. The tigers swarmed him. He screamed as they tore at him from every direction. Within 20 seconds it was over. Nothing left but a pool of blood and broken armor. Not even a bone remained. The second knight was clearly skilled. His spear blazed with red fighting energy, keeping the tigers at bay as they surrounded him. We almost relaxed, but one tiger stayed behind near the blood, circling and sniffing. It drifted toward our tents. Everyone held their breath. Sword-toothed tigers hold grudges. Once they fight humans, they won't stop until every nearby human is dead. If it found us, it would treat us as allies of those knights. Then it howled. It had caught our scent on the wind. It charged a tree and rammed its horn straight through the trunk, shaking the whole tree violently. A mercenary nearly fell but was grabbed just in time. The howl drew dozens more tigers racing toward us. There was no point hiding anymore. Fighting from the trees was impossible. If the tigers knocked them down, we'd be scattered and picked off. Lucci made a quick call. Get down. Battle formation. The mercenaries jumped down and formed a defensive circle in seconds, warriors on the outside, archers inside, and me in the very center. Protecting the mage is basic combat sense in this world. This was my first real fight since arriving in this world. I cleared my mind, took out an earth puppet seed, and began chanting. Meanwhile, arrows flew with deadly accuracy, targeting the tiger's eyes, their only weak point. Earth-type beasts have incredible defense, nearly invincible skin, and can use petrification magic. But their eyes are vulnerable. The first tigers hit by arrows stumbled and tripped the ones behind them, slowing the charge. But none were seriously hurt. They got back up and kept coming. Lucci stood at the very front of the formation facing the charge, holding her massive sword. The blade was 20 centimeters wide. The first time I'd seen it, I thought. It was a toy. It was hard to believe this slender girl could even lift it. The tigers crashed into us. Lucci swept her giant sword in a massive arc, white and red fighting energy exploding outward, sending the first tiger flying backward into the ones behind it. The beasts swarmed us from every direction. The mercenaries held their ground like nails driven into rock, not giving a single step. Wounded fighters rotated to the inside while others filled the gaps. But everyone could feel it. There were just too many tigers. Death was only a matter of time. I shut out everything. The roaring, the screaming, the clashing, and focused completely on my spell. The earth puppet seed floated up from my hands, glowing yellow, growing larger, shifting shape. Then it burst into a massive ring of light 30 meters across, hovering above our heads. It hung there alongside the two moons, beautiful and otherworldly. Then it dropped straight down to the ground around us and vanished. The mercenaries were crushed with disappointment. They'd been counting on me, their only hope, and nothing seemed to happen. They figured I'd failed. But then the ground started moving. A ring of dirt rose up where the light had landed. It grew visibly, climbing higher and thicker every second, pulling soil and rocks into itself. Within moments it was knee-high, then waist-high, then towering overhead. It kept rising until it reached 7 meters, a circular wall, 2 meters thick, surrounding us completely. This was my first building-type puppet, a wall. Unlike my wolf or fire puppet, it couldn't move or attack, but right now defense was what we needed. 7 meters was the most I could manage at my level, but it was enough. Sword-toothed tigers can't climb straight up that high. With the wall sealing us in, the few dozen tigers trapped inside were now a manageable fight. Hope flooded through the mercenaries, and they fought with new fury, slaughtering every tiger inside within moments. When it was over, they climbed the stairs built into the wall. It had everything a real castle wall would have, including arrow slots and battlements. Just no gate or watchtower. Standing on top, looking down at the endless sea of tigers below, everyone felt like they'd just cheated death. Then someone spotted the second knight from earlier, still alive, about 40 meters away, fighting desperately with his spear. He was drenched in blood, but slowly working his way toward our wall. He was tough and smart enough to know that joining forces was everyone's best chance. Lucci looked at him, then turned to us. "Get a rope ready. I'm going to save him." Before anyone could stop her, she wrapped herself in blazing fighting energy and leaped off the wall straight into the mass of tigers below. "Don't come back," the mercenaries screamed, but she was already gone. Lucci leaped down and split the first tiger's skull clean in half with one devastating strike. Her sword technique was simple, just basic cuts, thrusts, and sweeps. But every blow carried unbelievable power. She carved through the tigers like a small boat cutting through stormy waves, reaching the surviving knight quickly. He was badly wounded, especially his left thigh where a tiger horn had punched a large hole. She asked if he could hold on. He nodded, and she told him to follow her back. With her clearing the path, they fought their way to the wall. The mercenaries threw down ropes, pulled the knight up first. Then Lucci jumped and flipped herself over the top. It looked effortless, but I could tell she'd burned through most of her fighting energy. I admired her. Minutes ago, she'd ordered a man killed without hesitation to protect her team, and now she'd risked her life to save a stranger once everyone was safe. That told me a lot about who she really was. The knight introduced himself as Tang Ji, a high-level knight. He thanked Lucci with a formal salute. I noticed his name was only 2 characters away from Don Quixote. The mercenaries liked him, too. When the tigers had chased him earlier, he deliberately led them away from us. I noticed the wall had an amazing ability. Damage from the tigers ramming slowly repaired itself. As long as they didn't hit the same spot repeatedly, the dents would fill back in. Lucci spotted this too and visibly relaxed. Everyone looked to me for the next move. I checked the wounded. Nobody was in mortal danger, including Tang Ji. I had a light puppet seed that could heal them all, but I didn't want to reveal how long my puppets last, so I held it back. When Lucci asked what we should do, I said, sleep. She understood. Fighting in daylight was better. She ordered everyone to rest except the night watch. 2 tents had ended up inside the wall, so she gave one to me and one to the wounded. The injured protested and told her to take the tent herself, but she glared at them until they obeyed. I called Lucci, Habi, and Tang Ji into my tent to discuss strategy. I admitted I didn't know much about sword-toothed tigers. Habi explained their level: 2 earth beasts with incredible defense. They can temporarily turn their bodies to stone, making weapons bounce right off. They normally gather in groups of a few hundred. I pointed out there were far more than that now. Lucci agreed. She'd noticed their attacks seemed coordinated, almost like someone was commanding them. She suspected a Tiger King was leading the horde. Tang Ji confirmed it with a bitter laugh. He'd seen the king himself. His C-rank mercenary group had been on a mission when they ran into this swarm. Their captain was killed by the king's horn. His entire group was wiped out. He was the sole survivor. A Tiger King. Habi's voice trembled. Even Lucci went pale. I asked what the big deal was, and Lucci nearly fainted at my ignorance. She explained that a beast king is like an emperor among its species. It commands all others of its kind, has far superior intelligence and strength, and can mutate during battle. A regular sword-toothed tiger is level 2, but a Tiger King fights at level 5 or above. My first thought was, this is a boss. Years of gaming kicked in immediately. Killing a boss means loot. I asked if the king's crystal core was valuable. Tang Ji explained that a beast king is basically a walking treasure chest. Its crystal core has special magical properties that can enhance a mage's staff. Even its fur, claws, teeth, tendons, eyes, bones, and blood are priceless materials that alchemists and enchanters would kill for. Hunting one is like finding a massive treasure hoard. My eyes lit up. I was definitely killing this thing. The others saw it differently. They thought killing the king was their only way out, since sword-toothed tigers hold grudges and would never leave us alone. Tang Ji even offered to go out alone as bait so we could escape, but Habi shut that down. The tigers already considered us all enemies. What they didn't know was that I actually had an easier escape option. I could send my invisible winged eagle with a message to the support team outside the mountains, who could alert the Mages Guild for rescue. But if word got out about a beast king here, every mercenary group on the continent would come swarming for the loot. No way was I sharing this boss. Still, this wasn't a game. There were no respawns. I needed a plan that was 100% safe for everyone. Drawing on my years of gaming experience, I knew the strategy: grind the boss down slowly. You need a tank to absorb hits, a healer to keep the tank alive, and damage dealers to chip away at health. The problems here were that Lucci wasn't quite strong enough to tank the king safely, and there were tens of thousands of minions we couldn't clear first. But there was another classic technique: terrain exploitation, or what gamers call wall glitching. Trap the boss in a spot where you can hit it, but it can't hit you. I used to be an expert at that, and now I had earth puppets that could reshape the terrain. I laid out my plan. Lucci, Habi, and Tang Ji stared at me in disbelief. Lucci asked if I could really make all the strange puppet constructions I described. I grinned. There's nothing I can't make. Only things you haven't imagined. After they left, I reflected on tonight's fight and noted my biggest mistake. I should have started creating a puppet the moment the mercenaries were assembling, not after the battle began. From now on, if combat was even a possibility, I needed to have a puppet ready immediately. By morning, the original earth wall had been up for 3 hours, so I quietly made a new one to replace it, keeping my secret about puppet duration. I also made a water wolf to provide clean water for everyone to wash up. The mercenaries agreed that having a mage around was incredibly convenient. While Lucci briefed the team on the battle plan, I used puppets' eye through my winged eagle to finally spot the Tiger King. Unfortunately, my skill level was too low to watch through the eagle and command ground puppets at the same time, so we'd have to go in person. Then I started creating puppets. First, 2 massive earth centipedes. Each segment was half the size of a room, and their backs were as tall as the wall. Then 2 dark element skeleton soldiers, a light element holy dove, and several more fire, water, and wind puppets, plus 2 rhino beasts for the front line. The holy dove immediately flew to Tangji and bathed him in sacred light. His wounds healed completely in seconds. It moved on to every other injured person. Everyone was back to full fighting condition. I called out, "Move out!" The mercenaries split into two groups, climbed onto the centipedes' backs, and we advanced. The two rhino puppets took point, using their massive horns to bulldoze through the tigers. The centipedes marched side by side while other puppets flanked us, casting spells to push tigers back. Archers on top picked off tigers by shooting their eyes. The centipedes were too tall for the tigers to reach anyone on their backs. Our formation cut through the sea of tigers like a warship through waves. I sat on the front of the left centipede with Lucci and Tangji guarding me. Commanding the puppets through mental links was actually fairly easy. They had enough basic intelligence to carry out my intentions, though I occasionally had to correct one. If a puppet fell behind under heavy attack, I'd pause the formation until it caught up and self-repaired. After about 15 minutes, we spotted the Tiger King. It stood on a tall boulder, 3 times the size of a normal tiger. Its yellow and white fur was perfectly groomed, and its horn glowed faintly. It had a true king's presence. It looked at us approaching, raised its head, and let out a single roar. The shockwave shook leaves off trees and made the mercenaries' ears ring. Birds fled in terror. Every other beast in the area ran. Just one casual roar with that much power. I felt uneasy. Maybe challenging a beast king wasn't so smart after all. No wonder Lucci, Tangji, and Habi had all been terrified last night. After the roar, the tiger horde split apart, clearing a wide path straight to their king. We were about 400 meters away. I stopped the formation. The king stood on its rock in a cool pose, staring down at us with cold contempt. The regular tigers pulled back to the edges, watching and waiting. Was it sparing its minions from further losses, or was it confident enough to face us alone? Probably the latter. Even from 400 meters away, the three of us, Lucci, Tangji, and I, could feel the crushing weight of its presence. During the standoff, I made more earth puppets using seeds I prepared overnight from the tiger's own crystal cores, a nice perk of fighting earth-type beasts. As long as I had tree sap and tools, which I always carried, I could make seeds anywhere. Lucci grabbed her sword and volunteered to test the king's strength. I stopped her. That's what puppets are for. I sent a rhino beast charging at full speed toward the king's boulder. It didn't even look concerned. 3 tigers from its personal guard formed a line and intercepted my rhino, taking turns ramming it. The rhino was knocked down but kept getting back up. It couldn't be killed by physical attacks alone. Still, 3-on-1, it was clearly outmatched. I sent the remaining rhinos charging past the fight, straight at the king. Its bodyguard tigers intercepted most of them, but one broke through and climbed the boulder. The king casually raised one paw and slapped it. That single blow drove the rhino head first into the ground like a nail, its horn and half its head buried in dirt, legs kicking helplessly in the air. The mercenaries went pale. That was a casual swat with devastating power. But I wasn't worried. In my mind, this was a boss fight, and bosses are supposed to one-shot regular mobs. What mattered was that the rhino wasn't destroyed completely. If that slap had started dissolving it back into elements, I would have ordered an immediate retreat. But it survived, which meant the king's raw power, while terrifying, hadn't reached a level we couldn't handle. Tangji nervously suggested retreating, not out of cowardice, but concern for everyone's lives. He proposed either returning to the Earth Fortress to wait for rescue, or marching out of the mountains and letting the Imperial Army deal with the tigers. I told him he was making the wrong comparison. He was measuring each of us individually against the king. What he should be measuring was our team's combined strength. Warriors and earth puppets would pin the king down up close. Archers and fire puppets would attack from range, dark. Puppets would drain its life force with corrosion magic, and the holy dove would constantly heal anyone who got hurt. That last point stunned them. In this world, light mages are so rare and precious that no country puts them on the battlefield. These fighters had never imagined what combat looked like with constant healing support. I stood up and addressed the whole team. You have a holy dove circling above you. Sacred light will protect you at all times. Don't fear getting hurt. Just stay alive long enough for the dove to reach you, and you'll be fully healed. Now hold on tight. We're moving. The 2 centipedes surged forward at maximum speed, hundreds of legs churning, kicking up a massive dust cloud as our entire formation charged straight at the tiger king. The Tiger King stood on its boulders staring at the sky like a philosopher, completely ignoring us. When our formation reached 20 meters away, I split the two centipedes left and right around the king, then connected them, head to tail, into a giant circle, trapping the king and its bodyguard tigers inside, while locking out the thousands of others. I sent all my earth puppets at the king and shouted, "Attack!" The mercenaries jumped down into the ring to slaughter the bodyguard tigers while the earth puppets swarmed the king. Lucci and Tangji stood guard on the outer edge, ready to intercept if the king broke through. My two skeleton puppets each cast Life Erosion on the king, a dark curse that slowly drains life force. The effect was weak against the king, but devastating on regular tigers. Any tiger hit by it would weaken rapidly and collapse dead within about a minute. Combined with fire, water, and wind puppet attacks, the mercenaries tore through the bodyguard squad. 6 or 7 minutes in, every bodyguard tiger was dead. All attack puppets focused fire on the king: fireballs, ice spikes, wind blades. It was taking real damage, but I stayed alert. I noticed the king occasionally glancing up at me, and I got a bad feeling. I started making an extra earth puppet for personal protection. Then the king unleashed its true power. It roared so loud everyone's ears went numb, and its whole body erupted in yellow light. Every puppet touching it was blown away. Tang Ji charged in from the side with everything he had, his spear tip blazing red with fighting energy aimed at the king's neck. The moment it connected, a massive force knocked him away like a ball, leaving him coughing blood on the ground. Lucci saw the king was heading straight for me and sprinted to intercept, but it was faster. It reached the centipede I was sitting on in a flash. Instead of jumping up to the 6-meter high back where we stood, it simply rammed straight through the centipede's body, punching a hole clean through it. The impact knocked everyone on top off their feet. Then it turned and rammed again. The centipede broke in half with a thunderous crash, tearing open the encirclement. Everyone on its back, including me, fell through the gap in the broken ring. I crashed hard onto the ground. As I struggled to get up, I heard a low growl right beside me. Through the swirling dust, a mass of yellow light charged straight at me, the Tiger King. Up close, its size was overwhelming, like a mountain bearing down on me. I stared it down, ready to dodge. The king knew I was the real threat and had targeted me specifically. It leaped at me, but my newly made earth puppet charged in from the side and landed a massive punch. It barely deflected the king's trajectory, but that tiny shift was enough. I dove sideways, not fast enough. The king's body clipped my left arm, and it felt like being hit by a speeding truck. I flew several meters and hit the ground. The pain in my arm was so intense I nearly blacked out. A warm beam of holy light washed over me. The dove had used healing on me instantly. The agony vanished, and my arm was mostly restored in seconds. The dove had actually been preparing that spell for Tangji, who was badly hurt, but it prioritized me as its master. Before I could stand, the king came at me again. I rolled desperately on the ground, knowing I couldn't escape its claws this time. Then a blazing sword light streaked in. Lucci had arrived just in time. She threw everything into one strike, her giant sword wrapped in red-white fighting energy, aimed straight at the king's vital point. The king had to abandon its attack on me and meet her head-on, driving its horn forward. Her sword collided with the horn. Lucci was blasted backward through the air, spraying blood from her mouth. But the impact weakened the king's yellow aura to almost nothing, and the delay let my earth puppets catch up and surround it again. I scrambled to my feet and started issuing rapid mental commands. The puppets stopped attacking randomly and launched coordinated wave assaults. I backed away to create distance. Half the mercenaries gathered around me for protection, the other half plugged the gap in the centipede wall to keep outside tigers from flooding in. I immediately sent the dove to heal Lucci. She lay motionless on the ground. It took 2 rounds of healing light before she finally moved. I exhaled with relief. The king was weakening steadily. The most damaging thing was the dark magic. The 2 skeletons had been casting life erosion on it continuously since the start. After all this accumulated time, even a beast king couldn't endure it. Fire, ice, and wind spells pounded it relentlessly. Lucci and Tangji eventually returned to my side, fully healed by the dove. Aside from fatigue and depleted fighting energy, they were in perfect condition. The power of light magic was truly remarkable. About 20 minutes later, the mighty Tiger King finally collapsed. The moment it fell, every sword-toothed tiger outside the ring scattered in all directions. Without their king, they had no will to fight. The mercenaries erupted. People were jumping, screaming, hugging each other, crying. "We killed a beast king. We're heroes. Bards will sing about us." Some pumped their fists and shouted until their voices cracked. I thought their reaction was a bit much. It was just a boss kill. But I hadn't been in this world long enough to understand how incredibly rare beast kings are, how difficult they are to hunt, and how enormous the rewards would be. Still, their excitement was infectious, and I couldn't help smiling too. Seeing everyone hugging and celebrating, I spotted my chance. I put on an excited face and rushed toward Lucci with open arms, shouting about how we'd killed the king. She was so thrilled about the fame this would bring the Rose mercenary group that she opened her arms too, smiling and coming toward me. Just as we were about to embrace, Habby charged in from the side and bear hugged me instead, praising my magic. I was furious. My brilliant plan ruined by this old man. I wanted to order my fire puppet to blast him with a fireball. Then a dozen mercenaries grabbed me, hoisted me up, and started tossing me into the air, chanting my name. Everyone was throwing their helmets and cheering. It was getting uncomfortable, so I redirected their attention. "Let's check the loot." Tang Ji suddenly panicked. The king's blood. It had to be collected immediately before it clotted. Everyone scrambled over to the body. Lucci pulled silver bottles from a space ring, filled with a blue alchemist solution that keeps blood from ever hardening. They drained 3 full bottles from the king's neck artery. Then the skilled workers got to work, skinning, extracting the crystal core, pulling tendons, removing the horn, teeth, and every useful piece of material. While everyone was busy, I quietly dismissed the old earth wall. It had been nearly 3 hours, and I needed to maintain my secret. Without the sword-toothed tigers around anymore, nobody questioned it. I told Lucci I'd used up almost all my magic materials and suggested going back to the capital to resupply before tackling the ice giant mission. She laughed and said we didn't need the ice giant anymore. Killing a tiger king was actually a long-standing A-rank mission from the mercenary guild, higher reward than the B-rank ice giant mission. Nobody had ever completed it because the king's location was unpredictable and its army too massive. This alone was enough to promote Rose to C rank. Lucci told me to divide all the loot however I saw fit. Everyone agreed. The entire battle had basically been my show. But I remembered my World of Warcraft days, where greedy loot distribution destroyed teams. My principle was simple: don't shortchange myself, but distribute fairly based on need. We'd work out the specifics back in the capital. The mercenaries packed up, and we headed home. The mood was completely different from the march out. Everyone was singing triumphant songs the whole way. In less than 10 days, with 0 casualties, the Rose mercenary group had completed an A-rank mission. We linked up with the support team at the mountain valley, loaded the wind turtles with mountains of herbs and minerals they'd gathered, and headed back to the capital. A perfect trip. A few days later, we were back in the capital. We turned in the Tiger King kill at the Mercenary Guild and collected 50,000 gold coins. Split 50-50, I got 25,000, making me a small fortune holder in a world where average monthly income is about 10 gold. The Rose group also collected over 100 tiger pelts, horns, and fangs on top of their share, plus all the herbs and minerals from the gathering team. But the real treasure was the Tiger King's body. Every part carried high-quality magical properties, the kind of rare material that could be crafted into what I'd compare to epic-level gear from my gaming days. I distributed the loot fairly. Every mercenary who fought got a chunk of tiger meat and a cup of tiger blood, which permanently boosted their physical abilities. I kept 2 of the 3 bottles of blood for myself. I embedded the king's crystal core into a staff I'd bought. It boosted earth magic by over 50% and other elements by at least 10%. I gave one of the 2 sword fangs to Lucci for her giant sword and kept the other. The horn went to Tang Ji for his spear tip. One of the 3 tendons went to Habby for a bowstring. Half the hide went to Lucci for armor, half to me. A third of the bones went to the mercenaries, the rest to me. Then there was the tiger whip. When the mercenaries saw it, they all got these dirty grins. Lucci turned bright red. Apparently, it was the single most valuable part of the king, even more than the crystal core, because it could permanently enhance a man's stamina. I immediately declared it was useless garbage and volunteered to throw it away, stuffing it into my bag while everyone stared at me with contempt. Habby tried to offer his garbage disposal services, but I insisted the honor was mine. After this mission, Lucci and I agreed to team up again after the Mages Guild's 300th anniversary celebration. She needed time to recruit and reorganize after the C-rank promotion, and I had to attend the celebration as a new guild member. I spent the following weeks on magic research. My biggest advantage over people in this world was my innovative thinking from my previous life. After constantly improving my puppet seed techniques, I pushed my puppet's duration to 5 full days. I hit a wall there and couldn't extend it further, but I was satisfied for now. Other puppet masters average only 2 hours. My ultimate goal was someday creating puppets that never disappear. I spent my gold quickly: a magic staff, crystal cores for experiments, and a space ring for 4,500 gold. The ring had 5 cubic meters of internal storage that I divided into 4 sections: puppet seeds organized by element for quick access, equipment and my staff, gold coins, and the most important section, active puppets. I discovered something incredible while reading magic books. Space rings can't store living creatures, but puppets aren't alive. They're condensed magic elements. I tested it, and it worked perfectly. I could store ready-made puppets inside and pull them out instantly for combat, with no loss in fighting ability. This effectively made my puppet magic instant cast. This solved 2 problems at once. Nobody could see my puppets and figure out they lasted 5 days, and I'd always have protection against surprise attacks. I kept 3 puppet bodyguards in my ring at all times: earth for defense, water for defense, and fire for attack. Having 3 invisible bodyguards ready to appear at any moment made me feel much safer. After weeks of non-stop magic research, it was almost time for the Mages Guild 300th anniversary celebration. I decided to take a break and explore the capital for once. With 3 puppet bodyguards stored in my space ring and an invisible wind eagle circling overhead, I finally felt safe enough to go out. Looking around my empty villa, I realized how lonely it was. My puppets handled most chores brilliantly. The earth puppet cleaned better than any vacuum. The water puppet washed and dried clothes perfectly, and the wind puppet trimmed the garden. But they couldn't cook to save their lives, so I'd been ordering meals delivered from restaurants. And puppets can't hold a conversation. I needed real servants. I hailed a wind turtle taxi. The driver was a chatty guy who claimed his turtle was a retired imperial beast that once carried princesses. I doubted that, but he knew the city well. When I told him I wanted high-quality servants, he recommended a place called the famous Servant House on Treasure Street, the most upscale shopping street in the trade district. The place was impressive. A perfectly poised young woman greeted me and brought me straight to a VIP room on the 3rd floor when she saw my mage robes. The owner happened to be there and was thrilled to serve a mage personally. He explained they offered 2 types of servants. The first were hired help, paid monthly, could be dismissed anytime. The second were slaves, purchased outright, becoming your permanent property. He assured me all their slaves came through legal channels and were officially registered with the Empire. I already knew about the slave system here. About 5% of the Tianyan Empire's population were slaves, mostly prisoners of war or their descendants. Legal slave trading was permitted and regulated by the government. There was also an illegal underground slave market that the Empire officially banned. Those slaves were usually captured elves, demon folk women, and beast men. Elf women fetched astronomical prices on the black market, and the huge profits drove countless adventurers to form teams specifically to hunt and capture them. The shop owner kept talking, recommending I buy rather than hire because owned servants are far more loyal. He said he had a batch of top-tier female servants who'd just finished training, originally planned for that evening's auction. He offered to show me some before then. He clapped his hands, and 6 young women walked in, moving in perfect unison like trained models. Every step, every arm movement synchronized. They were all stunningly beautiful. The owner explained they were orphan slave children his shop had collected and raised since age 5, trained in etiquette, knowledge, arts, and loyalty. Out of thousands who started training together, only these few survived the selection process to earn the top-tier label. They all turned their hopeful eyes on me. Their fate depended entirely on who bought them, a kind master or a cruel one. I was young, a mage, and didn't seem like someone who'd mistreat them, so they all wanted to be chosen. I couldn't decide based on looks alone since they were all equally gorgeous. So I borrowed an idea from my previous life. I wrote up an exam, mixing questions from civil service tests and corporate hiring assessments. I gave them 2 hours to answer independently. When I graded the papers, one girl named Dana scored far above the rest. The owner wasn't surprised. His training department had already identified her as the best overall. I felt sorry watching the other 5 leave with disappointed faces. They were all orphans who'd trained there, whole lives just to serve someone, and the ones not selected would likely end up in far worse places. But that was the reality of this world, and nobody, not even the emperor, could change it. Then came the price, 15,000 gold coins. I nearly choked. The owner insisted this was already the auction floor price, with actual sales usually going for several times more. Decades of expert training weren't cheap. I made a counteroffer, 2,000 gold plus 1 free healing session from light magic whenever he, or anyone he knew, needed it. His jaw dropped. He couldn't figure out how I had light magic without being a light mage. I told him not to worry about the details, just know that I could cure any illness, like a light mage could. I gave him 2 options, 15,000 gold or 2,000 gold plus healing. No negotiation. He took the deal without hesitation, pretending to complain about the loss. I pointed out that he couldn't buy light magic healing at any price through the normal system at the Holy Light Temple, so he was actually making out like a bandit. I'd originally planned to buy several servants, but at these prices I'd get the rest elsewhere. I paid the 2,000 gold, completed the paperwork, and left with Dana. She was the youngest of the group, just turned 17, following quietly behind me. It was past noon when we left the servant shop, so I decided to grab lunch before exploring the night market later. On a whim, I took Dana into a mid-range tavern, the kind where adventurers and merchants eat. I'd always gone to upscale places before and was curious to see how ordinary people lived. The moment we walked in, the whole room went silent. A mage in this kind of tavern was unheard of, and Dana's beauty certainly didn't help us blend in. I was getting used to the stares by now. I told Dana to sit with me at the table. She said servants weren't allowed to eat with their masters, but I told her to drop the formality unless we were at some official event. She sat down obediently. Nobody dared bother us. These adventurers knew better than to mess with a mage. Every mage had powerful backers. As I scanned the room, I noticed something. The moment I'd entered, I'd felt a faint ripple of magical energy from someone with far greater power than mine. It vanished instantly, meaning whoever it was had deliberately hidden their presence. Only someone much more skilled than me could suppress it so completely. I couldn't detect the magic anymore, but I could still read people. In the corner sat an old man with several warriors. The old man had the bearing of someone used to authority. And those warriors, they were dressed in mid-level gear, but I'd learned some tricks from Habi about judging a fighter's true level. Every one of them was at least level 5, the same rank as Lucci and Tangji. That many elite fighters gathered together, and trying to hide their identities meant they were up to something big. Only a top mercenary group or a powerful noble house could assemble that kind of force. I noticed Dana had already spotted the old man too. Smart girl, she'd survived years of cutthroat competition among thousands of trainees. Her ability to read people was at least as good as mine. She immediately identified the old man as someone of high status with a proud, aloof air about him. The old man murmured something, stood up, and headed upstairs. His warriors followed. I asked the waiter about them. They'd been staying at the tavern for 2 days. About a dozen people total, most staying in their rooms all day while 3 or 4 went out constantly. Suspicious, but I decided not to get involved. I ordered 8 or 9 of the house specialties and asked Dana what she thought about those people, testing her. She answered without hesitation, laying out her observations, that the old man was clearly someone important with a refined but arrogant temperament. Dana's observations matched mine perfectly. That old man had the air of someone used to commanding others, plus a lonely arrogance, like someone who'd reached heights where few could follow. I told her he was at least a level 8 mage, with power I'd only ever felt from Chairman Bashako himself. She quickly pointed out something important. Why would someone that powerful act so suspiciously, hiding in a cheap tavern without even wearing mage robes? And his companions were clearly high-level swordsmen pretending to be mid-level. I agreed. This was trouble we shouldn't touch. We ate fast and left. What I didn't know was that upstairs, the old man, whose real name was Bridge, was discussing me with his men. One swordsman worried I might have discovered them and suggested killing me. Bridge refused. With the guild's anniversary celebration coming up, a mage disappearing would immediately raise Bashako's suspicion. Especially me. My talent was too high. The guild would definitely investigate. Instead, he ordered someone to follow me and told the group to relocate from the tavern immediately. Dana and I spent the afternoon browsing the trade district. I was enjoying looking at magical household items when I suddenly stopped. My winged eagle sent a warning. Someone was tailing us. The eagle had actually detected them shortly after we left the tavern, but only confirmed the threat. Now, I cursed its slowness, though honestly, for a puppet made with beginner-level magic, recognizing a high-level stalker at all was remarkable. I told Dana quietly not to look back. Then I put my arm around her waist. And we walked like a couple, common enough on these streets that nobody would think twice. She stiffened for a second, then relaxed, blushing slightly. I whispered that I needed to close my eyes and cast a spell, and she'd have to guide me while walking so the followers wouldn't notice anything strange. She understood immediately. I pressed close to her, caught the scent of her hair, had to force myself to focus, then closed my eyes and activated Puppet's Eye. Through the eagle's eyes I could see everything below, but the moment I tried walking while seeing from high above, I stumbled. It felt like standing on a cliff edge. Dana caught me before I fell. I opened my eyes, breaking the spell. I'd need to practice this. Being able to walk while using aerial vision was essential. But for now, I could only use it while standing still. Standing frozen on a busy street would look suspicious to my followers. So I came up with a cover. I pulled Dana close, wrapped my arms around her waist, and leaned in for a kiss. Nobody questions a couple kissing on the street. I closed my eyes and activated Puppet's Eye just before my lips reached hers. My vision switched to the eagle's aerial view. Eagle sight is incredible, not like human eyes at all. It can focus on multiple targets simultaneously with perfect detail across a wide area. I quickly identified 3 people tracking us. 2 behind, 1 ahead, a classic sandwich formation at long range. They were professionals. One was haggling with a vendor, another was casually sipping juice at a street stall. They only glanced our way occasionally, completely natural. One of them was arguing over a few silver coins so convincingly his face was turning red. No wonder my eagle had taken so long to confirm they were threats. Meanwhile, Dana had turned her head slightly when I leaned in, so my first kiss landed on her cheek. I adjusted without opening my eyes, kissed her nose, then found her lips. She tensed up, her breathing quickened, and I could feel warm breath on my face. I was simultaneously monitoring 3 surveillance targets from the sky and kissing a beautiful girl. Multitasking at its finest. When I finally opened my eyes, I'd memorized the surrounding streets and formed an escape plan. I asked Dana if she could drive a horse cart. She could. Her training had covered riding, driving, and handling gentle beasts. I told her to buy paper and ink from a nearby shop, then buy a waiting passenger cart outright. I whispered the rest of the plan in her ear and handed her a fistful of gold coins. She moved fast. She snatched the driver's whip, shoved all the coins into his hands, told him her master was buying his cart, jumped up, and drove off before he could react. He stared at the gold, enough to buy 3 carts, and hurried away before she could change her mind. Dana pulled up beside me and stopped. I jumped into the cart before it fully stopped and ducked inside. Go? Turn left at the intersection ahead. Dana cracked the whip and we took off at full speed. Inside the carriage, I closed the curtains, pulled out a wind puppet seed from my space ring, and quickly made another wind eagle. I also scribbled a note and had the eagle grip it in its talons. Then I used Puppet's Eye to check on the trackers. One was heading back to report, while the other 2 had activated a high-level thief skill, called Stealth, and were chasing us across the rooftops, their bodies reduced to faint shadows. Ordinary people would never spot them, but eagle vision missed nothing. When we turned a corner and a tall building blocked their line of sight, I threw open the carriage door and the new eagle shot out, rocketing skyward toward the Rose mercenary group's base with my message for Lucci. My plan wasn't just to escape. I wanted to capture these people and find out who sent them and why. I hadn't offended any major power since arriving in this world. The trackers started following me right after the tavern, so that mysterious old mage must have ordered it. But why? Since arriving here, I'd never felt truly safe. I'd seen adventurers kill each other in broad daylight on the streets, and the city guard was probably too weak to catch skilled fighters. That insecurity drove me to study magic obsessively and avoid making enemies. But trouble had found me anyway. Maybe it was time to join a noble house's power network. This world runs on alliances between strong fighters and wealthy nobles. They need each other. Going it alone was getting dangerous. Simply losing these trackers would only delay the problem. I needed to catch them and find out who was behind this. But I couldn't do it alone. I needed the Rose mercenary group's help. The winged eagle carrying my note was incredibly fast, streaking across the capital like lightning. Through Puppet's eye, I watched it reach the base and dive down. Lucci, Habi, and Tangji, who had officially joined the Rose group after his old team was wiped out, were in a meeting with their squad leaders. The eagle smashed through a window, and its wind blade magic shredded the wooden frame and plastic-like panels into tiny pieces that hung suspended in the air before raining down as dust. The mercenaries inside recognized the wind blade effect from our battle together and shouted its name. Lucci and Tang Ji jumped to their feet, faces tense, sensing the powerful burst of wind energy. The mercenaries grabbed their weapons, thinking they were under attack. Then someone spotted the nearly invisible winged eagle and realized it was from me. The tension dissolved instantly. Lucci picked up the note from the table. Through Puppet's eye, confirmed she'd received my message, then switched my vision to the eagle still circling above me. The two trackers were still following in stealth mode. I directed Dana toward the mercenary district. She drove expertly through the capital's main roads. About 20 minutes later, we reached the area near the Rose mercenary group's base. I had Dana steer into a narrow, winding alley. The trackers followed. After a few turns, they found the cart stopped. I was standing there, smiling at them. "It's a trap. Retreat," the lead tracker shouted. They'd been confident the whole time. Even if their cover was blown, they trusted their escape skills. But they'd been unlucky. My winged eagle was like having a spy satellite overhead. Their stealth techniques were useless against eagle vision. They split up. The first one leaped for the rooftops, and Lucci was waiting there. Her giant sword, now enhanced with the Tiger King's Fong, came crashing down. He blocked with his dagger, but the blade snapped in two. Her sword tip ended up at his throat. One move, done. The second tracker ran for the alley exit, where Tang Ji stood blocking the way. Spear pointed forward, stiff as a flagpole. True to his knightly honor, he formally challenged the man to a duel. The tracker wasn't stupid enough to accept. Instead, he spun around and charged straight at me, the defenseless mage. Classic thinking. Mages are weak up close, long casting times, easy to grab. Take me hostage and use me as leverage. What he didn't know was that I'm not a normal mage. In the blink of an eye, 3 figures appeared around me, pulled straight from my space ring. The first wore a fiery red robe, skin glowing red, flames burning on its head, my fire puppet. The second wore a water blue robe, with a translucent body that looked like it was made of clear water. I designed this one with a woman's form, delicate features, slender build. There's an old saying that women are made of water, so I figured water should be made into a woman. The third was a massive man, 2.5 meters tall, wearing nothing but shorts. Every muscle on his body was clearly defined, chest, abs, arms, back, but the surface had the texture of stone. If he weren't moving, you'd swear he was a statue. My earth puppet, the ultimate bodyguard. The tracker had never seen anything like my 3 puppets. The stone-muscled earth puppet, standing in front of me like a mountain wall, clearly shook him. But he had no choice. If he stopped, Tang Ji would catch up from behind. My fire puppet flicked its hand and launched a fireball at his feet. I didn't want to kill him, just stop him. The explosion sent a blast of hot air that forced him back several steps. But this guy was fearless. He charged through the heat wave and kept coming. Then my winged eagle struck from above with wind blades. He dodged partially, but the attack shredded his left sleeve and covered his entire arm in a web of bleeding cuts. He backed against the alley wall, face twisted in pain but refusing to scream. Then I saw his expression change to something hopeless, and he began whispering a strange chant. I recognized what was happening a moment too late. Wait, don't. But he finished the incantation and went still against the wall. Dead. He'd killed himself with some kind of suicide spell. Up on the roof, the other tracker heard his partner's chant and did the same thing. Lucci had her sword at his throat the entire time. She thought he might be casting an attack spell and braced herself, but instead he simply collapsed. When she checked, he was already dead. I sighed. These people were trained to die rather than be captured. That told me a lot about whoever sent them. This was a serious, professional organization. I told everyone we needed to leave before the city guard showed up. Lucci and Tang Ji loaded the 2 bodies into the cart. My water puppet walked over to the pool of blood on the ground, blasted it with a water jet, sucked up the diluted blood water, and sent it down a drain, then rinsed and dried the spot completely. Not a trace left, just a faint smell of blood in the air. That's when Lucci noticed Dana. She asked who she was, and I introduced her as my maid. Dana gave a graceful, perfectly trained bow. The humble maid Dana is pleased to serve you, noble and beautiful lady. Lucci nodded in reply. I noticed she seemed slightly bothered by having another pretty girl near me, but relaxed once she heard Dana was just a servant. Habby jumped down from his hiding spot on the rooftop. He'd been up there the whole time with his bow ready, though he never needed to fire. He pointed out that the fireball explosion had probably alarmed nearby civilians and suggested we get back to the Rose Base before the city guard came to investigate. Back at the Rose Base, everyone was shaken. Those two trackers had been high-level thieves, rare, valuable fighters in any organization. Yet they'd been assigned to something as trivial as following me, and they'd killed themselves rather than be captured. Whatever group they belonged to could afford to throw away elite talent and had trained them to choose death over interrogation. That was terrifying. I racked my brain trying to figure out when I'd made such a dangerous enemy. I'd been careful since arriving in this world, barely interacting with anyone. I narrowed it down to two possibilities. First, maybe the original owner of this body had enemies, but he'd been wearing beginner warrior clothes when I woke up. Could he actually have been someone important? Second, the mysterious mage at the tavern might have sent them. I'd only glanced at him, but whatever he was secretly planning must be enormous if just being noticed warranted surveillance. In the basement, Habby searched the bodies. They carried nothing but daggers, no identification, no clues. Their clothes bore a common commercial brand sold everywhere in the capital. On each man's chest, over the heart, was a magic circle designed to stop the heart. When activated by a specific chant, even if gagged, they could trigger it silently through mental recitation. These people were prepared to die under any circumstances. I had my fire puppet burn the bodies to ash. No point keeping them. I thanked Lucci for the help. She smiled and said we were partners, plus I'd saved her whole team in the mountains. Her combat power had nearly doubled thanks to the Tiger King Fong in her sword and the King Hide armor, both from the loot I'd shared with her. On the way home, Dana suggested sending the Rose Group to check the tavern. I told her there was no point. The mysterious mage was definitely gone already. At the villa, I thought everything through again. That powerful mage was probably the one behind the trackers. He was doing something secret, saw me notice him, and got worried. I needed to find out who he was. I went straight to the Mages Guild and asked Peter to show me all member profiles and their magical portraits. He led me to a hall with 336 small tables, each holding a crystal ball containing a mage's three-dimensional holographic image. I looked through every single one, twice. The mysterious old mage wasn't among them. I asked Peter if any member could be missing from the records. He was adamant. Impossible. Every member must leave 3 magical portraits upon joining. One for the guild, one for the Empire's personnel department, one for the palace archives. No exceptions. I asked him what it would mean if I'd seen a mage who wasn't in these records. His answer was immediate and certain. That mage is definitely not from the Tianyan Empire. He's from another country. The realization hit me like ice water. The person tracking me wasn't some noble family. It was another country. That explained everything. Those trackers killing themselves was classic spy behavior. I didn't know the details, but here's what was actually happening behind the scenes. The old mage, whose real name was Bridge, had already left the capital and was hiding in a small town nearby. He was a master-level mage from the Blue Moon Empire. His spy organization had been trying to infiltrate the Tianyun Mages Guild for 20 years and had managed to plant 2 agents and bribe 1 employee inside. They'd recently discovered that Bashako's Magic Research Institute was secretly studying dark magic, information that clearly alarmed Bridge greatly. He ordered his people to investigate further and keep watching me. Back at the guild, I was extremely uneasy. Being targeted by a foreign power was far worse than some noble grudge. I could have simply disappeared and nobody would have even noticed. I started putting things together. The guild's 300th anniversary celebration was coming up. A top-level foreign mage sneaking around the capital right before the event, hiding his identity. With elite fighters, this wasn't a friendly visit. Relations between the continent's major powers were already tense, and the different countries' mage guilds operated independently with no real cooperation. A powerful enemy mage infiltrating secretly almost certainly meant they were planning some kind of attack or sabotage. I thought about it practically. The Tianyan Empire had been good to me. 100 gold coins every month, special privileges, a villa, freedom. I was one of the beneficiaries of this system. The safer the empire was and the stronger the guild remained, the better my life would be. My decision was simple: report everything. My biggest concern was that the guild didn't know about the threat. Once they had the intelligence, they could handle it. This was their home turf with the full power of the empire behind them. Any infiltrators would be finished. Besides, the spies had only followed me because they were afraid I'd expose them. If I passed the information along and let the empire deal with it, the target would shift off my back. Reporting was the safest move for everyone, including me. I made up my mind to report everything and went straight to the Mage Tower to find Chairman Bashako. But he wasn't there. He'd gone to the palace. The receptionist said his schedule was packed for the next few days. I asked for the vice chairman, but he hadn't left the Magic Research Institute in nearly a year. The receptionist suggested I try the membership department instead. At the membership department, Peter told me the department head had just rushed home because his father fell seriously ill. He'd even taken a light mage with him. So Peter brought me to the deputy head, a man named Green, who'd been working there for 18 years. Solid, experienced, and trusted to handle everything while the boss was away. Green greeted me warmly, and I told him everything. The mysterious mage at the tavern, his appearance, his manner, his disguised warriors. I gave every detail I could remember, but left out the part about being followed by the two thieves. Explaining how I dealt with them would have revealed that I carry puppets in my space ring, which would expose how long my puppets last. Green confirmed what I already knew. There was no such mage in the Tianyun Empire. With the guild's anniversary celebration just 2 days away and tensions high between nations, a foreign master-level mage sneaking around could only mean trouble. He asked how many people knew about this. I said just the two of us. I didn't want to drag Lucci and the others into it. Green suggested we go together to the Imperial Intelligence Bureau to report directly to the director. I almost agreed, but then I hesitated. If I was dealing with a foreign nation's operatives, they might have level 9 fighters or higher. Walking through the streets to the intelligence office could be dangerous. I was safer staying in the mage district where powerful mages were everywhere. I made an excuse, said someone from the Magic Research Institute needed to see me, and I couldn't leave the district. The Research Institute answers directly to the Emperor, and nobody questions its business. Green couldn't argue with that. He agreed to deliver the report himself. A while later, Green came back to my dormitory and told me the Intelligence Bureau was already aware of foreign activity, had gathered some leads, and was monitoring suspicious individuals. They planned to catch them all at the right moment. I felt relieved. I'd done my duty. The Empire would handle it from here. Outside, dark clouds were gathering. A storm was coming. What I didn't know, what nobody in the entire Tianyun Empire knew, was that Green himself was the spy. He'd been planted by the Blue Moon Empire 18 years ago and had worked his way up to deputy head of the membership department. He'd been silently thanking his luck. If Bashako hadn't been so busy, if the department head hadn't left for his sick father, Bridge's entire plan might have failed. And Green was quietly regretting that I'd refused to walk with him to the Intelligence Bureau. It would have been so easy to have me killed along the way. Now he just had to hope I wouldn't cause any more problems in the day and a half before the celebration. June 20th, year 525 of the Continental Calendar, the Tianyun Empire Mages Guild 300th Anniversary Celebration. Hundreds of mages gathered by Moonshadow Lake in the Mage District, their robes fluttering in the morning breeze. This was the biggest event in the magical world. Magic in this world is as important as technology back on Earth. Beyond the spells that mages cast, there's a whole broader field. Magic array masters who draw enchantment circuits onto everyday objects, magic crafters who shape raw materials, and alchemists. Together they've built an entire civilization powered by magic. Universities even have magic departments, though they train craftsmen rather than combat mages. Things like magic stoves, magic refrigerators, and magic lamps all work through tiny magic arrays powered by crystal cores. The key to everything is the Array Eye, a precise microarray that converts crystal core energy into usable elemental energy. The conversion rate is never perfect, so improving efficiency is a top national priority. Each country's Magic Research Institute develops these Array Eyes, making them far more important than any science academy from my old world. Without Array Eyes, this civilization would have no energy at all, like Earth losing electricity, oil, coal, and nuclear power simultaneously. That's why the Mages Guild sits at the very top of society, and why this celebration was incredibly lavish. All but 4 mages in the Empire were present. The 3-day event included magical fireworks, grand parades, free performances across the city, and this centerpiece banquet hosted in the Emperor's name. He would personally attend and give a speech. The invited nobles were all heads of powerful families. Elegant young women floated through the crowd carrying trays of wine and juice in crystal goblets. Each goblet was made by a master crafter from magic crystal, transparent as the finest glass but harder than iron. A single cup was worth a middle-class family's yearly income. I wasn't much for socializing. Back in my old life, I rarely attended events like this, and I had no interest in trading empty compliments with nobles. I grabbed a green juice and stood off to the side. Then Brown, the wind mage who'd helped me test my water wolf weeks ago, walked over with a middle-aged nobleman. He introduced the man as Mr. Brenda. "So you're Roger," Brenda said warmly. "The Empire's 3rd elemental puppet master, and I hear you killed a beast king at such a young age. A true hero and a pride of the Empire." That caught me off guard. The Rose mercenary group had deliberately left my name out when they announced the kill. Someone with serious intelligence connections had figured out my involvement anyway. This Brenda family clearly had reach. Brown's jaw dropped. He hadn't heard about any of this. "You killed a beast king? Which kind? Do you still have any pure king's blood?" I told Brown I only had a tiny bit of tiger blood left. Actually, I had 2 full silver bottles, but I couldn't let the whole guild know that or everyone would come asking. Brown had helped me before with spell pronunciation, so I was happy to give him some. He begged for just 3 drops. I jokingly said I couldn't sell them to him, watching him panic, then told him I'd give them as a gift between friends. He insisted on paying 3,000 gold. When he saw my shocked face, he apologized and raised it to 5,000, saying he was broke because his 8 wives spent too much. I accepted, my mind reeling. 3 drops for 5,000 gold? He took the drops in a crystal vial, then suddenly shouted across the elegant party, "Hey, old weirdo, get over here." In this refined gathering where everyone whispered politely, a quarter of the guests turned to stare. An old man with wild white hair and a bushy beard appeared out of thin air right in front of us. Brenda gasped. "A space mage." The old man introduced himself as Ovis, the only space mage currently in the Empire. He'd been making all of the Empire's space rings for over 20 years. Across the entire continent, there were fewer than 10 space mages, and only 2 or 3 were truly skilled. Ovis snatched the vial, sniffed it, and his eyes went wide. Genuine Tiger King blood. Turns out Brown had a prior deal with him. 3 drops of King's blood for 1 medium space ring. Brown grabbed the ring and disappeared into the crowd, too embarrassed to face me. He'd just flipped a 5,000 gold purchase into something far more valuable. My eyes lit up. I asked Ovis if he wanted more tiger blood. He practically jumped. Brenda helpfully mentioned that Ovis had been searching for Tiger King blood for over a decade, letting me know how much leverage I had. I silently thanked him. I played it cool, saying I wasn't really short on money and didn't need to sell. Ovis grew impatient and told me to name my price. I said I'd only trade for space rings. He laughed and said rings were the one thing he had plenty of. Medium ones in bulk, about 10 large ones, and 2 extra large ones. I immediately asked about the extra large. He chuckled at my ambition. He'd only ever made 4 in his entire career. He explained he needed the tiger blood to make a space staff, which required a full silver bottle. After years of searching, he'd only collected half a bottle. For an extra large ring, he'd need half a bottle from me. I still had 2 full silver bottles of tiger blood, so half a bottle was doable. I asked how big an extra large space ring was. Ovis nearly choked. He couldn't believe I actually had that much. He'd spent years collecting and only gathered half a bottle himself. The extra large ring had over 12,000 cubic meters of space, enough for tens of thousands of puppets. Space rings bond to your soul when activated, and you can only have 1 at a time, so bigger is always better. Once bonded, nobody else can open it. It was impressive, but I didn't actually need that much space right now. 20 cubic meters would cover my needs. Trading half a bottle of priceless tiger blood for just a ring didn't feel like a good deal. I told him I could gather half a bottle, but a ring alone wasn't enough. He needed to sweeten the deal. I knew exactly what I was doing. This old man was the only space mage in the entire empire, a complete monopoly on one of the most valuable products in existence. He'd accumulated enormous wealth over the decades. If I didn't squeeze him properly when he needed something from me this badly, I'd never forgive myself. His white beard was trembling with excitement. He offered the extra-large ring plus 300,000 gold coins. My heart nearly jumped out of my chest, but I kept a straight face. Even Brenda, a wealthy nobleman standing right there, didn't seem impressed. For his class, 300,000 was pocket change. I casually said that mages don't really lack for gold and asked what magical treasures he had. He gritted his teeth and added 2 teleportation scrolls, each allowing instant transport to any location within about 5 kilometers. Both Brenda and I gasped at that. Magic scrolls are incredibly rare because making them is brutal. A mage has to spend at least a month continuously pouring magic power into the scroll, meditating and refilling over and over. It's exhausting work that can actually cause your magical abilities to regress. Almost no mage is willing to take that risk, no matter how valuable the result. But a teleportation scroll could save my life. For a puppet master with weak close combat defense, instant escape was the ultimate insurance. I was thrilled but pushed further. As an elemental puppet master, what I really wanted most were light and dark element crystal cores, the rarest and most useful materials for my craft. Ovis looked me over and recognized me as the new puppet master with the incredible talent scores. He decided to throw in his collection of rare crystal cores, 18 light element and 16 dark element cores, mostly level 3 and above. Things he had no personal use for. Deal, I shouted. The final trade. Half a bottle of Tiger King blood for 1 extra-large space ring, 2 teleportation scrolls, 34 rare crystal cores, and 300,000 gold coins. I was ecstatic. We went somewhere private to exchange. The scrolls still needed 3 drops of tiger blood to finish, so Ovis would complete them within a week. Brenda helpfully suggested I hold back 100 drops of blood until the scrolls were delivered, keeping things fair. Ovis grumbled but agreed. After getting his share of blood, Ovis slapped my shoulder and declared, "I like you, kid," which honestly gave me chills. He said if anyone ever gave me trouble, I should come find him. Then he laughed loudly and strolled back into the party without a care. Once he left, Brenda got to the point. He was the current head of the Yaren family, and he'd arranged this meeting through Brown to discuss a possible alliance. I'd been thinking about joining a noble house anyway. Every mage in the guild was affiliated with one. Having a powerful family's backing would give me access to resources I couldn't get alone, especially rare crystal cores. Brenda laid out his family's profile. His great-grandfather started as a merchant, and his father was granted nobility 30 years ago. The family only had 27 members, but their reach was staggering. They owned 40% of the empire's hotels, over 2,000 restaurants, and controlled the entertainment industry in 3 southern cities. 6 family members held major positions: foreign minister, a city's chief administrator, commander of a royal knight order, vice president of the National Merchant Council, and a university president. That explained how he knew about my Tiger King kill despite the Rose Group keeping my name quiet. With 40% of the empire's hotels, his intelligence network was everywhere. Some mercenary probably got drunk in one of his establishments and spilled the story. I was interested but valued my freedom. I asked about specific terms. What would the partnership actually look like? Brenda explained that his family had massive cash reserves and wanted to break into the booming magic technology industry. Magic stoves, enchanted appliances, and similar products that were spreading from wealthy households into ordinary homes. It was like the Industrial Revolution from my old world. But to truly dominate these new markets rather than just dabble, they needed a mage. Without one, they couldn't access the highest levels of magical manufacturing. I understood their strategy perfectly. This world was at the dawn of a magic industrial revolution, and whoever controlled the production of magical consumer goods would become enormously wealthy and powerful. Brenda explained their partnership model, standard for noble families allying with mages. They'd provide all funding and handle business operations. I'd serve as a magic consultant and provide magical expertise. In return, I'd get 15% of profits from any new magic-related ventures. He also offered to marry me to his niece, Delina Yaren, a formal family member. I quickly declined. The marriage part, I was too young and didn't like the idea of arranged marriages for business purposes. Brenda pushed gently, asking if I already had someone, suggesting his niece could be a secondary wife. He praised her beauty, her excellent grades at the Imperial University's business school, and her skill managing family affairs. I held firm and asked to discuss it another time. He was happy just getting a maybe on the business side and invited me to dinner after the celebration ended. I accepted. We strolled along Moonshadow Lake, chatting casually about the capital. Then we heard arguing ahead and went to investigate. At the Mage District's inner checkpoint, I saw someone I recognized, Green, the membership department deputy head, arguing furiously with guards. He was sweating, trying to get through, claiming the Magic Research Institute had sent him on urgent business. The guards demanded either a mage badge or a party invitation card. Green refused to go back to the Research Institute for a card. That made no sense. Getting one would take minutes. When the guards threatened him, he actually tried to rush past them and was grabbed and detained. Brenda found it strange. But my reaction was far worse. A cold knot formed in my stomach. Why wouldn't Green simply get an invitation card if his errand was legitimate? Was his story about reporting to the Intelligence Bureau actually true? Had he really passed along my warning about the foreign mage? A flood of doubts hit me. I trusted Green completely. 18 years at the guild, vetted background, seemingly reliable. But his behavior right now made no sense for an honest man. Before I could say anything to Brenda, elegant music began playing. The guards snapped into formation along the road. Brenda tugged my sleeve and whispered that the Emperor was arriving. We stepped to the side of the road. As nobles and mages, we didn't need to kneel, just stand with our right hand over our chest. The procession approached, armored guards marching in perfect lines, followed by two massive beasts that looked like dragons, winged, horned, and finned. My heart jumped, but I quickly realized they couldn't be real dragons. Dragons are holy level creatures that would never pull a carriage for a human, and I felt no overwhelming pressure from them. Just dragon-like beasts whose name I didn't know. They pulled a huge floating royal carriage, hovering about a meter off the ground. Unlike the temporary float spell that wears off quickly, this carriage had a permanent levitation array built into its base, powered by wind crystal cores. It could hover forever. The floating royal carriage was powered by a permanent levitation array built into its base, something only the Magic Research Institute could create. It was basically a national prestige project with no expense spared. But Emperor Constantine wasn't riding in it. He was walking behind it, casually enjoying the scenery of the Mage District. Chairman Bashako walked beside him, talking quietly. The Emperor's eyes swept over to where Brenda and I were standing by the road. He waved us over. Brenda whispered that the Emperor wanted to see us. I never expected to meet the ruler of this empire so casually, but I had no choice except to follow Brenda forward. Emperor Constantine wasn't as intimidating as I'd imagined. He wore a warm, approachable smile. We both placed our right hands on our chests and bowed. He seemed to know Brenda well, and immediately started chatting about a university reform that Brenda's older brother, the president of Imperial Capital University, was planning. The brother wanted to change the entrance exam system from a single unified test to separate professional exams by department, and he was also pushing the finance minister to create a special fund for students from poor families. The Emperor laughed and mentioned that everyone called the finance minister Iron Rooster because he never spent money. Brenda played along, saying the Iron Rooster had actually agreed to contribute 200,000 gold coins this time, so his family felt compelled to donate 150,000 as well. The Emperor saw right through the act and pointed out that amount was pocket change for the Yarn family, but he acknowledged their contribution to education. He also mentioned that graduates had improved since Brenda's brother became president, though they still lagged behind Blue Moon empires. Swan Lake University. Then Constantine noticed me. He didn't recognize my face, but Bashako introduced me as a new guild member. The Emperor's expression brightened. He said my name was on today's knighting list, and that he'd seen my file when the personnel minister submitted new special talents. He called me the Empire's third elemental puppet master and a once-in-centuries magical genius, saying the Empire needed more people like me to catch up with the Blue Moon Empire in magical development. I bowed deeply and thanked him, saying his praise was the greatest honor of my life. Then he continued toward the banquet venue. Brenda and I fell back behind the procession. A guard in shining armor approached Brenda and called him Father. This was Brenda's eldest son, the commander of the Royal Silver Knight Order. Normally, the Emperor's security was handled by the Gold Knight Order, but this celebration was so large that the Silver Knights had been called in for extra patrols around the capital. Walking behind the procession, my mind kept going back to Green and what I'd seen at the checkpoint. His desperate attempt to leave the Mage District without proper authorization made no sense if he was honest. Why not simply get an invitation card from the Research Institute? It would take minutes. Unless he couldn't go there because his story about reporting to the Intelligence Bureau was a lie. The unease in my gut grew stronger. But the Emperor had already arrived. The celebration couldn't be cancelled, and I had no hard evidence of any attack plot. I decided to stay quiet and watch how things developed. My 3 puppets were still in my space ring, ready to deploy instantly. If something happened, my immediate defensive capability was far stronger than any other mage here. As long as I survived the first wave of any attack, I'd be fine. There were plenty of powerful fighters and guards around to mount a counterattack. I tapped Brenda's shoulder and pulled him aside from the procession. He looked puzzled. I asked if he had anything important left to do at the banquet. He said his main goals were meeting me and networking with other family heads. I chose my words carefully and told him I had a bad feeling, a sense that something might go wrong. I suggested he leave now. He stared at me, shocked, but he could see I was completely serious. I wouldn't explain further, just said it was a mage's intuition. He studied my face for several seconds, then nodded solemnly. He made an excuse about having some urgent business at home and headed for the exit. At the checkpoint, he showed his invitation card, and the guards let him through without trouble. Outside, his personal beast tamer brought his wind turtle around, and his butler was surprised to see him leaving so early. Brenda simply said to go home. On the ride back, he told his butler to immediately transfer 150,000 gold coins to the university as the family's scholarship donation, and to backdate the paperwork to match what he'd told the Emperor. He'd made up the donation on the spot during the conversation, so now he had to make it real. Smart move though. Spending that amount to earn the Emperor's approval was a bargain. Not too much to seem suspicious, not too little to be meaningless. I watched him go and shook my head. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe nothing would happen. But since we were likely going to become partners, looking out for his safety cost me nothing. I followed the guards and musicians back to the banquet area. Nearly 600 people had gathered and fallen silent. Emperor Constantine and Chairman Bashako had stepped onto a small platform by the lake, covered in thick red carpet, with musicians and palace attendants lined up behind them. A court official announced in a loud voice that the Mages Guild 300th anniversary celebration banquet was officially beginning. First on the agenda was the knighting ceremony. He began reading names of mages to be honored. The very first name called was mine. I hurried up to the platform, surprised to be going first. 2 other mages followed. According to tradition, the Empire grants the title of Honorary Baron to special type and light element beginner mages, as well as mid-level mages of common elements. Today, 3 of us would receive that honor. The knighting ceremony went smoothly. Emperor Constantine raised his royal staff and declared my honorary baron title. Palace maids brought out badges glowing with faint magical light on red silk trays, and other maids pinned them to our chests. I looked down at the baron badge sitting next to my mage badge and thought to myself that I'd officially joined the privileged class of the Tianyan Empire. After we 3 stepped down, the court official introduced Chairman Bashako for his anniversary speech. Bashako walked to the front of the platform and began speaking about gratitude, thanking the Emperor, the Empire, and all the guests for their support over 300 years. He talked about how magic used to be feared because people only associated it with war and destruction, but now it brought better products, comfortable living, convenient transportation, and stronger national defense. He spoke about the legendary mage Alai who invented the Array Eye, which made magic energy widely usable and changed everything. He was building towards something inspiring about the future of magical civilization when he suddenly stopped mid-sentence. The audience clapped, probably thinking the speech had ended naturally, but I could tell something was wrong. Bashako turned around and called for the commander of the Royal Gold Knight Order. He asked if any Griffin soldiers had been deployed to the area. The commander said no. No Griffin units had been mobilized at all. Bashako's face went pale. He said he could sense Griffins approaching and detected magical fluctuations. He immediately ordered all Griffin archer units scrambled to the Mage District and demanded the Emperor be evacuated right away. The Gold Knight commander didn't waste time asking questions. He rushed to the Emperor's side and urged him to leave. Constantine trusted Bashako completely and agreed instantly. The commander ordered a signal flare launched. A magic firework screamed into the sky and exploded in blood-red light, leaving a crimson cloud hanging in the air, the emergency summons for the Griffin Air Corps. I reacted immediately. I released my 3 puppets from my space ring and stared at the sky. This was it. The foreign attackers were making their move. But I didn't run. I calculated that the first wave of any attack would arrive before anyone could escape. If their opening strike could be easily dodged, the whole operation would be pointless and the attackers would just die in the counterattack. No competent commander would launch an attack that way. The first wave was designed to hit before people could flee. Some guests pointed at the sky, confused. Someone asked if those were cloud eagles. Then someone recognized them as griffins. Another person stupidly asked why griffin soldiers were coming. Then someone screamed that those were Blue Moon Empire griffins and panic erupted. Guards surrounded the emperor and rushed him off the platform, shouting warnings about an enemy attack. Archers drew their bows and aimed skyward. Over 20 massive griffins descended toward the banquet area. It was my first time seeing these creatures up close. They were enormous, bodies over 3 meters long with wingspans of 8 or 9 meters. They had lion bodies with tawny fur, lion tails and claws, but eagle heads and golden wings. Every feather on their wings was like a long golden fan. Griffins are the true rulers of the sky in this world. Dragons prefer hoarding treasure in mountain caves rather than flying, so griffins dominate aerial combat. Only 2 flying creatures. Carry riders, gentle cloud eagles used for civilian transport, and fierce, fast griffins used exclusively by the military. Griffin soldiers are essentially this world's air force, used for rapid strikes and long-range reconnaissance. Each griffin carried 2 riders, a beast tamer controlling the flight and an attacker behind them. Normally the attacker would be an archer, but these had mages riding in the back positions. Griffin mage units are extremely rare. Only the Blue Moon Empire had trained about a dozen of them, because they had nearly 2,000 mages, nationwide with the highest magical standards on the continent. The White Silver Knight commander, Brenda's son, stared up in disbelief. Even the Blue Moon Empire supposedly didn't have this many griffin mages. Had they secretly expanded their forces? Everyone was baffled about how enemy griffins could appear directly over the banquet without triggering any of the capital's defenses. The city had watchtowers, stretching dozens of kilometers outside the walls, guards posted day and night, and smoke signal systems designed to detect exactly this kind of aerial threat. The truth was devastating. The spy Green had smuggled the griffins into the city by ground. Beast tamers had drugged the griffins, unconscious the night before, and packed them into large wooden crates, transporting them by land into the capital disguised as commercial cargo. During peacetime, guards rarely inspected every shipment, especially one carrying official Mages Guild transit papers that Green had provided. The griffins were stored in a residential compound near the mage district that Green had purchased, and this morning the beast tamers fed them antidotes to wake them up. The griffins were groggy and not in peak condition, but they could still fly and fight. That explained how they bypassed every layer of aerial defense and appeared directly over the celebration. As the griffins hovered overhead, their massive wings generated winds stronger than the worst hurricane. Trees bent like grass. A small tree snapped and crashed down. Crystal goblets, plates, and silverware were swept off tables and scattered across the ground. Fine juice and food spilled everywhere, trampled by panicking crowds. Some combat-experienced mages tried to raise magic shields, but discovered something horrifying. They couldn't gather their magic power. The drinks and food at the banquet had been drugged by Green. He'd been smart about it. He knew actual poison would be detected by the standard silver needle testing, so instead he used a spirit-suppressing sedative. Completely harmless to ordinary people, undetectable by poison checks, but it temporarily blocked mages from accessing their magical abilities for 1 to 2 hours. When the mages realized they couldn't cast spells, panic truly set in. Most of them were scholars who'd never seen combat. The elegant nobles who had been exchanging refined pleasantries moments ago were now shoving each other aside to flee. Female mages who had been the picture of grace hiked up their long gowns, kicked off their high heels, and ran barefoot. Some tripped on their own dresses and fell, unable to get back up in the stampede. The scene dissolved into complete chaos, screaming, shouting, and terror everywhere I looked. Nearly 3,000 people were at the banquet. Over 300 mages, about 100 noble family heads, elite royal guards, servants, musicians, and palace maids. When the panic started, everyone crashed into each other trying to escape. The whole thing happened incredibly fast. The outermost runners hadn't even made it 30 meters before the griffins spread out and surrounded the area from above. The mages riding the griffins tossed down ice and wind spells. Fist-sized chunks of ice rained down on the people trying to flee at the edges, smashing over 20 of them. Bloody. Then came the sound I recognized all too well, the sharp hissing of wind blades cutting through air. The nobles at the outer ring had lived comfortable lives and knew nothing about combat magic. They just stood there staring up with wide eyes, not understanding what the strange rippling in the air meant. That was the last thing they ever saw. The wind blade magic was devastating. Invisible spinning currents sliced through everything like countless razor blades. The people caught in it suddenly froze in place, their clothes shredded into fluttering strips. Then countless crisscrossing cuts appeared across their bodies, blood pouring from everywhere at once. They looked like they'd been pulled from a pool of blood. Then they fell like red wooden posts, one after another. The people behind them saw this horror and stopped running forward immediately. They screamed and tried to turn back, crashing into others still pushing from behind. A huge mass of people tumbled to the ground in a tangled heap. The griffin mages kept circling overhead, pulling out magic scrolls and activating them one after another. Scrolls are expensive single-use items that cast instantly without draining the user's own magic power. The spells they released didn't have obvious visible effects, but the temperature around the banquet area started dropping rapidly. Within seconds, cold winds were blowing through the venue. Ground archers fired volley after volley at the griffins, but these were high-level magical beasts. Their flying speed earned them the nickname Golden Lightning. Most arrows missed entirely. The few that connected were either deflected by the powerful wind currents from the griffins' wings, knocked aside by their claws, or stopped by wind magic shields enchanted onto their bodies. Even the strongest archers couldn't penetrate a griffin's thick hide after their arrows had already punched through the shield. The White Silver Knight commander, Brenda's son, searched the chaotic crowd for his father but couldn't find him anywhere. He didn't know I'd already convinced Brenda to leave. Seeing that the emperor was safely being escorted away by guards, he turned his attention to fighting the griffins. He pulled out his personal bow and loaded a special arrow crafted by the Magic Research Institute, enhanced with wind magic. He'd always considered these too precious for normal use. The arrow flew with pulsing magical acceleration. His deep fighting energy shattered the griffin's magic shield, and the arrow pierced into the beast's chest. But the griffin barely reacted. He fired a second enhanced arrow into the same wound, driving it halfway into the creature's body. That finally caused serious injury. Realizing ordinary archers couldn't hurt the griffins themselves, he bellowed an order that cut through all. The noise: target the beast tamers and mages riding on the griffins' backs, not the griffins themselves. The archers adjusted, and though the riders were largely shielded by the griffins' massive bodies, the threat level increased significantly. The wounded griffin went berserk. Ignoring its tamer's commands, it dove straight into the crowd on the ground. It grabbed a guard's head with one claw, crushing his helmet like paper. He died instantly, blood streaming from the mangled metal. Then it pecked another guard's stomach, punching through his armor and his body, leaving a bowl-sized hole. The man rolled on the ground, screaming in agony. A third guard slashed at the griffin's leg from the side, but his sword only shaved off some fur without breaking the skin. The griffin kicked him and sent him flying over 10 meters. He was dead before he landed, and his body crashed on his several nobles. Then a soft, holy light descended onto the guard with the punctured stomach. His wound healed at miraculous speed. A female light mage had cast a high-level healing spell on him. She must not have eaten or drunk anything at the banquet, so the sedative hadn't affected her, and she could still use magic. The griffin spotted her immediately and thrust its enormous beak at her head. But my earth puppet charged in from the side, wrapped its stone arms around the girl, and shielded her with its back. The griffin's beak struck the puppet instead, chipping off a large chunk of stone, but leaving the girl unharmed. I'd positioned myself against a thick tree trunk when the chaos started, keeping out of the stampeding crowd. My 3 puppets were already deployed around me in a defensive formation. I'd drunk some of the drug juice too, so I couldn't create new puppets right now, but the ones I'd already made before the drug took effect worked perfectly fine. Watching the attack unfold, I was certain this was just a preliminary harassment wave. The real killing blow hadn't come yet. The powerful fighters I'd sensed at the tavern, people at level 8 or above, still hadn't shown themselves. The griffin mages had dropped low briefly to cast their initial spells, but had since climbed back to high altitude, nearly out of magical attack range. My 3 ground puppets couldn't threaten them up there. I did have one more puppet besides these 3, my wind eagle. But my old space ring only had room for 3 puppets, so the eagle had been sitting in my dormitory room for the past 2 days. I hadn't let it patrol the skies over the mage district because this area was full of powerful mages. A magic puppet constantly circling overhead would create detectable magical fluctuations, and the last thing I needed was some research institute mage getting curious and trying to capture and dissect my eagle. But now the situation had changed completely. Rules and caution didn't matter anymore. People were dying. The griffin mages controlled the sky and ground forces couldn't stop them. I needed my eagle. It was time to release the wind eagle. I sent a mental command to my wind eagle back at the dormitory. The poor thing had been stuffed in a wooden box on top of a cabinet for 2 days. The moment my order reached it, the box flew open and the eagle shot out through the window like a bolt of lightning, arriving over the banquet in seconds. I set the eagle to freely attack the beast tamers and mages riding the griffins, then turned my attention to the bigger picture. My earth puppet, the stone man, had already rushed over to save a female light mage from a grounded griffin. He wrapped his arms around the girl and took a vicious beak strike on his back. A chunk of stone broke off, but the puppet wasn't flesh and blood, so losing some rock didn't matter at all. He set the girl down, then grabbed the griffin's neck and hung on with his full weight. A 2.5-meter stone giant is unbelievably heavy. Even a high-level magical beast couldn't support that, and the griffin toppled over. The two rolled around on the ground like children wrestling. The beast tamer and mage on the griffin's back were thrown off. The mage was injured from the fall and couldn't get up. A guard rushed in and finished him with a sword. Then a man from the crowd leaped high into the air, flipped upside down, and drove his greatsword straight through the griffin, pinning it to the earth. He pulled his blade free and retreated back to the emperor's side. This was the chairman of the Warriors Guild, a level 8 fighter who'd been attending the banquet as a guest. My stone man quietly returned to my side after the griffin died. I surveyed the battlefield. The scene was still complete chaos. Several griffins circled the outer edges, dropping small ice spells to drive people back toward the center. Nearly 3,000 guests, mages, and servants were still packed together in the middle of the banquet area, unable to escape in any direction. My wind eagle was doing excellent work overhead. It had already killed one mage, causing that griffin to flee without offensive capability. It also clipped a beast tamer with wind blades, sending him plummeting from the sky. His griffin flew off uncontrolled with the remaining mage desperately clinging on, heading who knows where. Chairman Bashako hadn't eaten or drunk anything at the banquet either. He'd spent time casting extremely powerful fire magic shields on both the Emperor and himself, which took a while given how advanced those spells were. Then he launched himself into the air using wind magic. A level 9 mage can fly without any mount, at least for short bursts. Floating above the battlefield, Bashako used only basic fireball spells, but in a grandmaster's hands, even simple magic was terrifying. His fireballs were smaller than normal, almost beginner-sized, but the elements were so compressed that the flames burned white-blue and hissed with incredible heat. One fireball hit a griffin's back and instantly killed both the beast tamer and mage riding it. The griffin itself survived, but was badly hurt, and, sensing how dangerous Bashako was, turned and fled rather than fight. Bashako took out 3 griffin teams in quick succession. The White Silver Knight Commander's archers scattered 2 more. My wind eagle eliminated 2. The Warriors Guild chairman pinned 1. That was 8 teams down total, leaving about 2/3 of the original force still in the air. On the surface, it looked like the Tianyan Empire was winning, but watching the overall pattern made my blood run cold. I was absolutely certain the most dangerous moment was about to arrive. The Blue Moon Empire hadn't sent their most expensive military unit on a suicide mission, just to drop some ice chunks and wind blades. This was preparation for something far worse. I analyzed their attack pattern. The outer griffins used ice and wind magic to herd people toward the center, packing the crowd tighter and tighter. Once everyone was concentrated in one area, the logical next step was obvious: a massive area of effect spell. They were herding us like ducks into a kill zone, then planning to wipe everyone out with a single devastating attack. The implications were staggering. Almost every mage in the Tianyan Empire was gathered here, plus the heads of every major noble family. If this crowd was destroyed, the Empire would lose virtually all its high-level magical talent in one stroke, and the political and economic chaos from losing so many powerful family leaders simultaneously would be catastrophic. Then I noticed something that confirmed my theory. I was shivering. The temperature around the banquet had been dropping steadily this entire time. Those ice spells the griffins had been casting weren't just for hurting people. They were saturating the air with ice element magic, preparing the environment for a massive ice-type attack. That also explained why the enemy hadn't used any fire magic at all. Fire and ice elements cancel each other out, and too much fire energy in the air would make their big ice spell impossible to cast. It also explained why Bashako had been using exclusively fire magic and why he'd given the Emperor a fire-type shield specifically. Fire shields are the best defense against ice attacks. Bashako had understood the enemy's plan from the very beginning. The gap between his experience and mine was enormous. I'd only been studying magic for a little over a month. I desperately tried to remember what I'd read about high-level ice magic, but I'd barely studied advanced spells. I had no idea what specific attack was coming. I grabbed a mage running past me and demanded to know what the most powerful large-scale ice spells were. He was in full panic mode, screaming at me to run. I slapped him across the face and asked again. He snapped out of it long enough to answer. Level 8 Blizzard and Level 9 Frozen 1,000 Miles. Then he tore free from my grip and disappeared into the fleeing crowd. Now I knew what was coming. Either Blizzard or Frozen 1,000 Miles. I immediately sent a mental command to my Wind Eagle, calling it down from the sky and beginning to reshape it into a different form to prepare for the incoming attack. High above the banquet, Bashako stopped attacking the remaining griffin mages and stared at a new griffin approaching fast. This one had no beast tamer. 2 people stood on its back. The front one was a powerfully built swordsman carrying a broad blade. The one behind him wore mage robes. It was the mysterious old mage I'd seen at the tavern. His name was Bridge, but there was another man I didn't recognize. Bashako called him Perlma. From the thick, white fighting energy radiating from his body, a full foot thick, it was clear. He'd reached level 9, the Grandmaster tier. Apparently, he'd recently advanced from level 8, and nobody in the Tianyan Empire had known about it. So that was why the Blue Moon Empire had dared to launch this attack. Bridge was their Mages Guild chairman, a level 9 mage just like Bashako. And now they had Perlma, a level 9 warrior, to keep Bashako busy while Bridge cast the devastating spell. I'd underestimated Bridge badly back at the tavern. I'd guessed level 8, but he was actually level 9, equal to Bashako himself. Worse, Bashako had fought Bridge 3 times before and lost every single time. Perlma started with a polite greeting, clearly trying to waste time while Bridge chanted behind him. Bashako didn't fall for it. Without a word, he launched a silent wind blade around Perlma, aiming at Bridge to interrupt the spell. But Perlma's sword swept through the air with devastating fighting energy and blocked it cleanly. The battle between 2 Grandmaster-level fighters erupted in the sky above us. The remaining Griffin mages scattered at full speed the moment Bridge appeared. They knew what was coming and didn't want to be turned into ice sculptures along with everyone else. On the ground, people saw the Griffins leaving and thought the danger was over. They started running outward again, overjoyed. But 6 female light mages stayed still. Their leader was the level 5 light mage my stone puppet had saved earlier, a woman named Agnes. She looked up at the sky and went pale. She recognized the spell Bridge was casting, Frozen 1,000 Miles. She told her 5 younger companions they couldn't outrun it. The killing radius was enormous, covering the entire Moon Shadow Lake area and beyond. They'd never make it out in time. Then Agnes spotted me reshaping my Wind Eagle. Her eyes lit up with hope and she rushed over, bringing her 5 students with her. By then, I'd already transformed the eagle into something completely different, a hemispherical transparent shield hovering above my head. Reshaping a puppet doesn't require magic power, just mental commands, so the sedative in my system didn't stop me. Agnes looked at me with desperate, pleading eyes. She begged me to save them. She knew my name from the knighting ceremony minutes ago. She was about 25, wearing a thin white mage gown like her students, and in that moment of mortal danger, they all looked utterly vulnerable. I nodded and told them to get close and sit down inside the shield's radius. I sat on the grass first. The shield was meant for just me, so with 7 people total, we had to squeeze together tightly. Agnes blushed as she pressed against my side and called her students over. They were between 14 and 20 years old, all training at the Holy Light Temple, completely innocent. This was their first time pressing close to a young man, and despite the life-threatening situation, their faces turned bright red. The transparent wind shield lowered like an upside-down bowl over all of us. Then I had my stone puppet step forward and punch the top of the shield 3 times, driving its edges about 40 centimeters into the ground. This sealed us in and anchored the shield against whatever was coming. The youngest girl asked Agnes what this dome was for. Agnes explained it would block the deadly cold from outside. I asked Agnes what she knew about the spell. She said Frozen 1000 Miles was a level 9 small forbidden spell. Its effective killing range covered the entire lakeside, could freeze the whole mage district solid, and would drop temperatures across the entire capital. A forbidden spell doesn't simply direct magical elements at a target. It completely destroys the elemental balance in the surrounding space, creating a cascading chain reaction like falling dominoes, unleashing catastrophic destructive power. While she explained, I was already reshaping my other puppets. My beautiful water puppet collapsed into a water ball, then stretched out into a second dome-shaped shield, layered over the wind one. Then I transformed my fire puppet into a third shield over that. We now had 3 layers of protection: fire on the outside, water in the middle, wind on the inside. Fire was the best counter to ice magic. Up in the sky, Bashako was fighting desperately. He'd been launching fierce attacks, trying to reach Bridge and interrupt the spell, but Perlma was spending his fighting energy recklessly on pure defense, blocking everything. A Grandmaster swordsman fully committed to defense was an impenetrable wall, even for a level 9 mage. Bashako couldn't break through in time. When Frozen 1000 Miles was about to activate, Bashako had no choice but to abandon the offensive and rush back to protect the Emperor. He'd already placed a fire magic shield on the Emperor earlier, which was the best possible defense against ice attacks, but he needed to reinforce it personally. Agnes and I exchanged a worried look. We could both feel what was happening. We were both extremely sensitive to magical element fluctuations. Ice elements, which are actually a mutation of water elements rather than one of the 8 basic types, were flooding in from every direction like a tidal wave. Meanwhile, all other elemental types were draining away, becoming dangerously thin. The natural balance of magical elements in the surrounding space was collapsing. The chain reaction was about to begin. Inside our 3-layered shield, surrounded by 6 frightened young women pressed tightly against me, I braced for the most terrifying magic I'd ever witnessed. The elemental balance shattered completely. The ice began its rampage. The small forbidden spell had been activated. Nothing in this world could stop what was coming now. In the blink of an eye, dark clouds rolled across the sky. Moments ago, it had been a beautiful clear day, like a basin of clean water. Now someone had poured a bottle of ink into it. A wave of cold radiated outward from Bridge's position in the sky, spreading in every direction. In an instant, the earth froze. In an instant, everything froze. A ring of pale white mist expanded outward at terrifying speed. Everything it touched turned to ice. A thin layer of frost raced across the ground behind it. The plants along the lakeside were first coated in white frost. Then within a heartbeat, that frost became solid ice, encasing every leaf and blade of grass in what looked like thick white wax. The celebration banners that had been flapping in the breeze stopped dead, their surfaces gleaming with a hard, icy shell. The people, who had been running and screaming moments ago, suddenly went still, as if someone had cast a freezing spell on them individually. Every single one of them stood motionless like clay statues. The color drained from their faces in an instant. Rosy cheeks turned deathly white, then gradually disappeared beneath a thickening crust of ice. Inside our 3-layered shield, we could see everything. The wind and water layers were fully transparent, and the fire layer was like tinted red glass. The girls around me were frozen in shock, not from cold, but from horror. Their minds had gone completely blank. They sat with their mouths open, staring at the nightmare unfolding outside in absolute silence. I handled it slightly better, only because I'd seen something similar in a disaster movie called The Day After Tomorrow back in my old life. But even with that reference, the reality was incomparably more terrifying. This was the true power of a small forbidden spell. This was what it meant to be helpless before the overwhelming force of nature weaponized by a Grandmaster Mage. For the first time, I truly understood the gap between myself and the strongest people in this world. It was a chasm I couldn't even begin to cross. The fire shield was doing its job perfectly, keeping us warm as spring inside. But I could feel something wrong. Through my mental connection with the fire puppet, I sensed the outer shield getting thinner and thinner with every passing second. Ice elements are a mutation of water elements. Fire and ice are natural opposites that repel each other. The fire shield was being battered by wave after wave of frozen energy and was slowly losing substance. The fundamental problem was that the fire puppet needed to absorb fire element energy from its surroundings to sustain itself, but Bridge's spell had completely destroyed the elemental balance in the area. There were virtually no fire elements left in the air, only ice. Without fuel to replenish itself, the fire shield was being eaten away by the hostile ice energy, shrinking steadily. Then my mental link with the fire puppet suddenly cut off. I said it out loud before I could stop myself. The fire shield was gone. The girls trembled. Looking outside, they could see the faint red tint of the outermost layer dissolving into the frozen wind. The temperature inside our remaining shields dropped immediately. Their thin ceremonial gowns offered no protection against the biting cold that crept in. Fortunately, the water and wind layers were still holding, blocking the truly lethal temperatures. The girls shivered violently, but weren't in immediate mortal danger. One of the younger girls clung to the sister next to her, both huddling together for warmth. She asked Agnes in a shaking voice whether the remaining 2 shields would break too. Agnes couldn't give a certain answer. She just said not to be afraid, that the goddess of light would protect them. That was exactly what I was worried about too, and honestly, I didn't know the answer either. At this point, it was in fate's hands. When I'd warned Brenda to leave the banquet, I'd considered leaving myself. But I needed to be present for the knighting ceremony. Back then, I'd only suspected an attack without being completely certain, and I'd been fairly confident my 3 puppets could protect me, so I'd stayed. But I never imagined the attack would be a small forbidden spell. A forbidden-level magic was beyond anything I'd prepared for. Was I going to die here today? I couldn't accept it. I'd crossed into this incredible world, become part of the privileged elite, just received a noble title, and 300,000 gold coins. My entire brilliant future was right in front of me, and I hadn't even started enjoying it yet. The thought of becoming an ice sculpture before experiencing any of it was maddening. If I'd known this would happen, I would have skipped all the magic research and just bought myself some beautiful companions and enjoyed every night to the fullest. At least then I wouldn't have died with so many regrets. Coming to another world and not even experiencing its pleasures before dying. That would be the most pathetic ending imaginable. I silently promised myself that if I survived this, I would stop postponing enjoyment and start living immediately. Then came a soft cracking sound from outside. The water shield had broken too. The water puppet was made from water element energy, and since ice is a mutation of water, parts of the water shield were gradually being converted and absorbed by the surrounding ice elements. Sections of it crystallized into thin ice, and once the elemental composition was corrupted, the whole structure fell apart, shattering into pieces. With the water shield gone, only the wind layer remained between us and death. The cold became agonizing. Every breath stung. The girls completely lost hope. 2 of the youngest ones started crying softly, tears streaming down their faces as they clutched each other. Frost began forming on the outside of our last wind shield, white crystal flowers spreading across the transparent surface. Then the frost thickened into a layer of solid ice, sealing us inside like a snow globe. We could no longer see anything outside, just white ice encasing our final barrier on every side. We sat there in the dim, freezing space beneath our one remaining shield, 7 people pressed together as tightly as possible, shivering, crying, waiting, and hoping that this thin dome of compressed air would hold long enough for the nightmare outside to end. I had no idea whether it would last another minute or another second. All I could do was maintain my mental connection with the wind puppet and pray that the spell's fury would pass before our last defense crumbled away. Outside our shield, Moon Shadow Lake had frozen solid from surface to bottom, one enormous block of ice. Everything within 2 kilometers was encased in thick ice. Chairman Bashako had retreated to the Emperor's side and enclosed them both inside a powerful fire magic shield. The Warriors Guild Chairman, the Gold Knight Commander, and the Silver Knight Commander had stayed close to the Emperor and were also protected inside that shield. Across the entire lakeside, only 2 spots survived, Bashako's group and ours. Almost everyone else had been frozen solid within seconds. A handful of high-level warriors had managed to resist by burning their fighting energy to protect themselves, but frozen 1,000 miles lasted. Far too long. One by one, their energy ran out and they froze to death, their bodies locked inside thick shells of ice. Bashako survived because his Grandmaster-level magic power was deep enough to sustain the fire shield throughout the entire spell. My wind shield survived for a completely different reason. Puppets don't consume my personal magic power. They sustain themselves by absorbing elemental energy from the environment. Before the spell hit, Agnes had advised me to let the puppets absorb as much energy as possible, so my wind shield had a full reserve when the catastrophe struck. Then Agnes suddenly shouted that it was over. Frozen 1,000 miles had stopped. I reached out with my senses and confirmed it. The elemental balance was slowly restoring itself. The lethal cold was fading. The girls exploded with joy. Tears poured down their faces as they screamed and hugged each other. The relief of surviving something that should have killed us was overwhelming. They laughed and cried at the same time, completely losing control of their emotions in the most beautiful way. Agnes told me to remove the wind shield so we could see outside. I dismissed the wind puppet, but we immediately discovered a new problem. The thick layer of ice that had formed around the outside of our shield was still there. With the shield gone, we were now trapped inside a dome of solid ice. I punched it as hard as I could. It didn't budge. I started to worry. With no airflow through the ice, we'd suffocate once the oxygen inside ran out. The wind shield had blocked ice elements, but still allowed air through. Solid ice did not. We didn't have much time. I asked if anyone had tools, a hammer, a chisel, anything. The girls shook their heads. They were research mages who lived comfortable lives. Their space rings didn't even contain warm clothing, let alone tools. Then I slapped my own forehead. My stone man was still out there. During frozen 1,000 miles, the earth puppet had lost about 2/3 of its mass, but earth elements are the most stable and defensive of all types. Combined with my staff's Tiger King crystal core boosting earth magic, the stone man had endured the entire spell without dissolving. I sent a mental command. Outside, the stone man's shoulders shifted. Ice cracked and fell off its body in chunks. Its feet were frozen to the ground, but it wrenched free after a few struggles and began walking toward us, shedding ice with every step. I warned the girls to cover their ears. The stone man raised its massive fist and hammered the ice dome. After 2 or 3 thunderous blows, the ice shattered open. Cold but fresh air rushed in. The girls gasped and breathed deeply, cheering with renewed energy. I climbed out of the broken ice dome and immediately heard the clash of weapons from Moonshadow Lake. The frozen lake surface was now a battlefield. The Warriors Guild chairman and the Gold Knight commander were attacking Perlma together, while Bashako stood nearby, conserving his remaining magic power. Bridge had completely drained himself casting frozen 1,000 miles and was temporarily helpless, hiding behind Perlma's defensive swordplay. Bashako had also spent most of his power maintaining the fire shield during the spell, so he had little magic left. 2 Grandmaster mages both desperately needed to recover their energy. The Warriors Guild chairman and Gold Knight commander were clearly outmatched by Perlma individually, but they were buying time. I immediately understood the situation. If those 2 fighters died, Perlma would come for us next, and we'd have 0 chance of escaping. I shouted to the girls, "Heal them now." They stared at me blankly. I'd accidentally used gaming language. I corrected myself. Cast healing spells. Agnes sent holy light onto the Gold Knight commander while the other girls all cast healing on the Warriors Guild chairman simultaneously. 3 or 4 heals stacked on one person, wasting enormous amounts of magical energy. I groaned at the inefficiency. These scholar mages had absolutely no combat experience. I immediately took charge and split them into 2 healing teams, each assigned to 1 fighter, with a lead healer and backup healers who only stepped in during emergencies. Basic raid healing strategy from my gaming days, but it instantly doubled their effectiveness and eliminated the waste. Then I had Agnes cast buff spells on both fighters, strength enhancement, speed boosts, while throwing every debuff she knew onto Perlma, slowness, weakness, anything available. She also gave Bashako a magic recovery acceleration spell. The tide turned immediately. Perlma started losing ground. Even though he was far stronger than either fighter individually, he couldn't cope with enemies who kept getting healed back to full health every time he wounded them. The fighters began using suicidal attack patterns, trading blows that would normally kill them, knowing the light mages would restore them instantly. Perlma had never faced anything like this. He wanted to break free and kill the light mages first, but the Warriors Guild chairman was fighting with complete disregard for his own life, making every exchange a mutual death strike. Perlmutt couldn't shake him loose. Agnes handed me a pure white pill called a light holy fruit. It could neutralize the spirit-suppressing drug from the banquet food. That explained how all these girls could still cast spells. They'd taken the antidote. Unfortunately, Agnes only had 10 pills and hadn't had time to distribute them to other mages before the attack. If more mages had received them, Bridge might never have successfully cast his forbidden spell. I swallowed the pill and felt my magic power return within moments. Now I had to decide what to do with my restored abilities. I could make puppets to block Perlma and Bridge's escape routes, helping Bishako's side achieve a complete victory. But I chose to make another stone man instead. My wind eagle, water puppet, and fire puppet had all been destroyed by frozen 1,000 miles. I only had one battered stone man left for personal defense. Against a grandmaster warrior who might have hidden techniques, that wasn't enough. It was a selfish decision, and I knew it. But in this world, keeping myself alive came first. Battle results were secondary. The moment I got back to my villa, my mind was already racing with plans. If war broke out between the Tianyan Empire and the Blue Moon Empire, strategic supplies like crystal cores would skyrocket in price. This was an opportunity one couldn't waste. I needed to act before the news about the massacre at the banquet spread to the general public. I called Dana immediately. Go to the trade district right now. Hit the wholesale crystal core market and buy as many level 0 and level 1 cores as you can. Level 0 cores come from domestically farmed magical beasts. This world has magic beast ranches just like Earth has cattle farms. These tame beasts provide crystal cores, fur, bones, and meat. The cores aren't as good as ones from wild beasts hunted by adventurers, but they're produced in huge quantities and used in everyday magic appliances across the entire empire. Dana didn't ask why. She never did. Whatever I told her to do, she obeyed completely and did her absolute best. That quality alone made her worth far more than the 2,000 gold I'd paid. I handed her all 30 bank notes from the exchange with old Ovis, 300,000 gold coins total, each note worth 10,000. I told her to keep her identity secret. Nobody could know I was behind the purchases. She took the notes and turned to leave immediately because I'd said the word, immediately, and she took everything literally. I stopped her before she reached the door. I'd already switched to my new extra-large space ring, so I emptied out my old small ring and gave it to her. Then I assigned 2 puppets to protect her, a stone man and a skeleton. The skeleton was particularly useful as a deterrent. In this world of privilege and power, noble young men regularly harassed beautiful women on the streets. I didn't want Dana dealing with that nonsense. I taught her how to store the puppets in the ring and release them when needed. With those 2 guards, her personal safety was practically guaranteed. One look at a walking skeleton and nobody would dare bother her. After Dana left, I noticed something surprising. The villa looked different. Better. She'd been quietly redecorating while I was away at the celebration. There were elegant potted plants with artistic arrangements, fine cushions on the leather sofas. The tea table was spotlessly clean with fresh fruit arranged neatly on top. Dozens of small touches throughout every room. When I'd lived here alone, this place was just a fancy building. Now it actually felt like a home. Dana was truly an exceptional servant. I sat down and thought carefully about the situation. On my way back from the Mage District, I'd noticed that ordinary citizens on the streets were going about their daily lives completely normally. They had no idea what had just happened. Some people near the edge of the district had seen the dark clouds and felt cold winds, but they probably assumed the mages were showing off with some grand magic display for the anniversary celebration. Even now, with soldiers pouring toward the Mage District, griffin patrols circling overhead, and extra guards appearing on every corner, most people just thought the security for the celebration was unusually tight. Nobody imagined that a catastrophe threatening the entire empire's future had just occurred. The empire would try to suppress the news, but I knew that was impossible. You can't hide the deaths of over 300 mages and nearly 100 noble family heads. This wasn't just a tragedy. It was an existential crisis for the Tianyan Empire. Losing over 300 mages meant the empire's high-level magical talent had been virtually wiped out. The Magic Research Institute would be critically short-staffed. The quality of array eye production would plummet, and since array eyes determine how efficiently crystal core energy is used, the entire empire's energy system would become less efficient. Unlike scientific knowledge on Earth, which can be preserved in books and databases, magical ability in this world depends entirely on the practitioner's personal talent and level. Low-level magic craftsmen simply cannot perform the high-precision magical work that true mages do. The Empire's magical civilization would be set back by years, maybe decades. The death of nearly 100 family heads was equally devastating. These nobles controlled the Empire's economic lifelines. Each one was the supreme leader of a powerful clan. Their deaths would trigger internal succession battles within every family. Well-established houses with centuries of tradition had strict inheritance rules and wouldn't completely fall apart, but political, maneuvering, and power struggles were inevitable. New family heads would restructure business strategies, reassign positions, and reorganize operations. If one family did this, the impact on society would be minor. But 100 of the Empire's most powerful families doing it simultaneously would send shockwaves through every sector of the economy. I couldn't predict exactly how bad things would get or what would happen if the two empires went to war. I'd only been in this world for about 2 months and didn't understand enough about the deeper political and military dynamics. But one thing I was absolutely certain about: crystal core prices were going to surge. With the array quality declining, everyday magic appliances would consume more energy, creating a supply shortage. If I bought a massive stockpile now while prices were still normal and sold after the news broke, I could easily make 10 to 15% profit or more on 300,000 gold coins. Then I thought about the Rose mercenary group. They were the closest thing I had to real friends in this world. Lucci, Tangji, Habi, and the mercenaries had fought beside me and risked their lives to protect me during the Tiger King battle. Friendships forged in combat are the strongest kind. If the Empire was heading into turmoil, they deserved advance warning so they could prepare and avoid unnecessary losses. I couldn't waste time. I changed out of my mage robes and put on ordinary wealthy civilian clothes to avoid attracting attention. I loaded my space ring with multiple combat-ready puppets and created 2 wind eagles to circle overhead as an early warning system. Then I went outside, hailed a wind turtle taxi, and headed straight for the mercenary district. The Rose group needed to hear about this before the rest of the world found out. When I walked into the Rose mercenary group's base, several mercenaries greeted me enthusiastically. They asked about the anniversary celebration, wondered if the dark clouds over the mage district had been some spectacular magic show, and said they were looking forward to our next mission together, maybe hunting another beast king. I wasn't in the mood for small talk. I asked where Lucci was. They told me she was in the warehouse with Tangji and Habi, discussing supply management. Tangji had officially joined the Rose group as vice captain after his old team was wiped out by the Tiger King. Despite the Rose group being smaller than his previous unit, he loved the team spirit here and fit right in. The mercenaries respected him deeply because he embodied every knightly virtue: compassion, humility, honor, honesty, courage, and fairness. His only flaw was being too serious and never cracking a smile. At the warehouse, I found mercenaries hauling out iron crates while Lucci, Tangji, and Habi discussed something nearby. When Lucci saw me, she smiled brightly, more radiant than 1,000 blooming orchids. She asked why I'd come instead of attending the guild banquet. I noticed what they were doing and asked if they were moving house. Tangji explained. They'd accumulated too many and used supplies and were about to sell the excess at the wholesale market. My stomach dropped. If I'd arrived half a day later, they would have sold off crystal cores, metal ores, and other materials that were about to become incredibly valuable. I told them to stop everything immediately and come talk with me in the strategy hall. Lucci caught my subtle signals, a wink and a glance at the mercenary squad leader directing the move. She understood instantly that I was serious and that the reason couldn't be discussed in front of everyone. She ordered the squad leader to halt operations without explanation. The squad leader offered to just finish the job himself, but Lucci shut him down with a tone that left no room for argument. Habi quietly whispered to the squad leader as he passed, "Suspend all sales until further notice." In the strategy hall, I told them everything. The attack on the banquet, the Blue Moon Empire's Griffin Mage assault, the drugged food that disabled every mage's powers, the spy Green who'd smuggled the Griffins into the capital, and finally the forbidden level ice spell that froze everything and everyone within 2 kilometers solid. I told them the survivors could be counted on 2 hands: Emperor Constantine, Chairman Bashako, The Warriors Guild chairman, the Gold and Silver Knight commanders, myself, and 6 female light mages. That was it. Out of nearly 3,000 people at the banquet, over 300 mages, about 100 noble, family heads, elite guards, servants, and musicians. Almost everyone else was dead, frozen into ice sculptures by a single catastrophic spell. When I finished, the room went completely silent. Dead silent. Lucci, Tangji, and Habi understood the implications far better than I did. They knew the Tianyan Empire's political landscape, the history of conflict with the Blue Moon Empire, and the enormous influence those noble families wielded. They could see the full scope of the disaster more clearly than I could. After a long pause, Lucci spoke decisively. She said they should focus on what needed to be done right now rather than worrying about long-term consequences they couldn't control yet. Habi recovered next and started listing priorities. Don't sell any crystal cores or strategic materials. Immediately dump any luxury goods and artistic materials that would become worthless in wartime. Stop recruiting new mercenaries to conserve cash, and buy a large stockpile of grain. Lucci added a crucial warning. Since the news hadn't spread to the public yet, they needed to be careful. Their actions couldn't be so dramatic that anyone would suspect they had insider information. If the authorities traced the leak back to me, I'd be in serious trouble. The Emperor would definitely crack down on war profiteering once the news broke, and anyone caught hoarding strategic materials would be punished severely. I smiled inwardly at her concern for me. In reality, the Rose mercenary group's financial resources were too small to move any market. They were a tiny fish. Even if they went all out, they couldn't cause a ripple in the capital's enormous trading markets. But Lucci's instinct to protect me, even in this small way, touched me. And she was right that caution was always better than carelessness. Habi assured them he'd act with restraint and maintain secrecy. I didn't stay long after delivering the message. I'd done what I came to do, warn my closest friends so they could prepare. By evening, Dana returned with her report. She'd successfully purchased 300,000 gold coins worth of crystal cores through intermediary brokers, never showing her face directly. The purchases were spread across multiple channels to avoid drawing attention. But she'd noticed something interesting. After she finished buying, other large buyers had entered the market and started quietly snapping up crystal cores too. By the time the trading hall closed for the day, crystal core prices had already risen over 4%. I praised her work. She'd handled everything perfectly, discreet, efficient, and thorough. But I was curious about those other buyers. Someone else had clearly gotten wind of the disaster and was making the same play I was. Maybe the Warriors Guild chairman had told someone. Or maybe the Yaran family had figured it out on their own. After all, the Silver Knight commander was Brenda's son, and had been at the banquet. He would have seen the casualties firsthand, and could have sent word to his family immediately. The Yaran family had the financial muscle to move markets in ways the Rose Group never could. Either way, the clock was ticking. Once the full truth came out, prices wouldn't just rise 4%. They'd explode. Every household in the Empire depended on crystal cores for their magic stoves, their lights, their ice boxes. With the mages who maintained the energy infrastructure mostly dead, efficiency would plummet and demand for raw cores would surge. I'd gotten in at the ground floor, and that 300,000 gold investment was about to multiply significantly. That same evening, rumors started spreading through the capital's upper circles and adventurer communities. In taverns, banquet halls, and street corners, people were buzzing with wild theories about what had happened in the Mage District. One man claimed with absolute authority that the Mages Guild had tried to cast a massive spell. That backfired, killing several mages. He seemed delighted about it, saying he'd always hated how arrogant mages were. Another man panicked, hoping the dead weren't light mages because his father had a terminal illness and was counting on getting a healing slot at the Holy Light Temple. Then someone else jumped in, insisting it wasn't a magical backfire at all. Someone had actually attacked and killed 5 mages. He claimed his information was the most reliable because his uncle's aunt's nephew was a member of the Silver Knight Order and had been stationed outside the Mage District that day. But nobody believed him. Who would dare attack with the Emperor present? Even the man himself couldn't defend that claim. Gossip in this world was every bit as wild and unreliable as it was back on Earth. The next day, the capital's strategic goods markets erupted. Massive waves of money poured into crystal cores, healing potions, and grain. Prices skyrocketed, especially crystal cores, which jumped about 20% in a single day. Some traders and brokers who'd been sitting on inventory saw the spike, dumped everything they had, and celebrated their quick profits. But when prices kept climbing even higher, they kicked themselves and started asking what was going on. Some connected the dots to the rumors about dead mages. If top researchers at the Magic Research Institute had been killed, array quality would decline and crystal core demand would surge even further. Those traders jumped right back in as buyers, pushing prices up even more. By the third day, every ordinary citizen in the capital had heard some version of the story. The guild's celebration activities had been officially suspended, which confirmed that something real had happened on June 20th. People were now certain there had been a serious incident, though the details varied wildly across hundreds of different versions. In a world without proper news media, a single event could spawn an endless parade of contradictory stories. That day, the crystal core market went absolutely insane. Prices shot up in a frenzy that left everyone stunned. Compared to what I'd paid through Dana just 2 days earlier, cores had risen over 70%. The speculation fever in this world was every bit as intense as anything I'd seen on Earth. Human greed is apparently a universal constant across all worlds. Give people a commodity market and the chance to make quick money, and they'll drive prices to absurd heights regardless of which reality they live in. I figured that as magical civilization kept developing here, eventually they'd create the equivalents of stock exchanges, futures markets, and commodity trading floors. I hadn't gone to the trade district myself during those 2 days, but Dana kept me updated on prices constantly. The scale of the price swings genuinely surprised me. My crystal core holdings were now worth about 500,000 gold coins, a profit of roughly 200,000 in just 2 days. But I knew better than to push my luck. Crystal cores are this world's primary energy source, essential to every household and every industry. The imperial government couldn't possibly let prices run wild forever. In any speculation frenzy, the people who get too greedy always end up losing everything. I expected the emperor to intervene soon, so I had Dana start selling off our entire stockpile in small batches to avoid attracting attention. After everything was sold, I calculated our total profit, 223,000 gold coins. I deposited every coin into my account at the Imperial Bank and walked away from the crystal core market completely. I'd taken what I could and felt no regret. Whether prices went higher or crashed afterward was no longer my concern. Looking back, my timing was actually quite good. Prices eventually peaked at about 80% above normal before the imperial government stepped in. And when the emperor intervened, it wasn't the gentle regulatory approach I remembered from Earth. There were no hearings, no gradual policy adjustments. A single royal decree came down, and anyone caught manipulating strategic resource prices faced execution and total confiscation of family assets. Merchants loved money, but they loved their heads more. Crystal core, grain, medicine, and steel prices all dropped immediately, settling at about 30% above the original level. After banking my profits, I locked myself in my villa and threw myself into magic training with renewed intensity. Surviving frozen 1,000 miles had been a brutal wake-up call. I'd seen firsthand the staggering gap between my abilities and the true powers of this world. That forbidden level spell had destroyed 3 of my 4 puppets and nearly killed me despite my best preparations. Survival in this chaotic world depended entirely on personal strength, and mine was clearly insufficient. I'd gotten lucky this time. Next time, luck might not be enough. A day later, the Empire finally released its official report on the incident. According to the government, a group of assassins from the Blue Moon Empire had infiltrated the Mage District intending to disrupt the anniversary celebration. Under the Emperor's brilliant leadership, the Empire had launched a swift and devastating counterattack. Nearly all the Blue Moon assassins had been killed, with only their leader Bridge escaping. The Blue Moon's other commander, the level 9 warrior Pearlma, had been slain by Imperial forces. The report acknowledged that some mages and nobles had been injured or killed in the incident, and the Emperor expressed deep personal regret, even visiting the families of fallen mages himself. The foreign minister issued a fierce condemnation of the Blue Moon Empire's cowardly actions and demanded they hand over Bridge immediately. He warned that failure to comply could result in further action by the Tianyan Empire, including military force. The official report also warned that Blue Moon spies were spreading false rumors in the capital, claiming that mages from the Magic Research Institute's 3 major divisions had died in the attack. The government called these lies designed to destabilize the empire's commercial order. Citizens were urged to ignore rumors and refrain from hoarding crystal cores or grain. The official statement was obviously a carefully managed version of events, dramatically understating the true casualties. But it served its purpose. After the announcement, public order gradually returned to normal. The wildest rumors died down somewhat, though unsettling whispers continued circulating quietly, and a general sense of unease hung over the capital.